Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere darker. A time of marching, meth pills and misery. We're diving into what life was really like for a Nazi soldier in World War II. Forget the movies, forget the propaganda posters with perfect uniforms and heroic poses. The truth is you wouldn't last a single day. So before you get comfortable, maybe hit the like button and subscribe if you actually enjoy this kind of thing. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I always love seeing how many of you are scattered across the world, tuning in from different time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe put on a fan for that steady background hum, and let's slip into this together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1941. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, so are the orders. You're a cog in the Nazi war machine, crammed into a barracks with dozens of other men who smell like they've been marinating in sweat, smoke and damp wool for weeks. Your mattress is a straw sack that's already collapsing in the middle. Your blanket itches like sandpaper, and your boots are plotting against your feet before you even stand up. You're 20 years old, but when you stretch, your spine sounds twice that. And as your sergeant's voice cuts through the morning haze, you realise something. You don't belong to yourself anymore. You belong to discipline, to exhaustion, and to a little white pill called Pervitin that's about to become your new best friend and your worst enemy. You're not in your bed anymore. Forget the clean sheets, the hum of a fan, or the quiet of your neighbourhood at night. You've just woken up in 1941 inside a barracks that smells like a mixture of wet leather, mould, and too many men packed into too small a space. Congratulations, you've been drafted into the Wehrmacht. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, you're now state property, and your state happens to be Nazi Germany. The first thing you notice is the smell. It isn't a passing whiff either. It's everywhere, soaked into the floorboards, hanging in the stale air, baked into the fabric of the uniforms piled around you. Sweat, tobacco smoke, unwashed wool, and the faint sour odour of boots that have been marched in for weeks without seeing so much as a rinse. Your nose adjusts eventually, but only because everything else is competing for your attention. The coughing, for example. At least 3 guys in your unit hack like they're on their last lung, and it doesn't matter if it's tuberculosis or just another cold. Nobody gets to rest. If you can stand, you can march. If you can march, you can fight. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a wooden bunk stacked in rows like livestock pens. No mattress, just a thin straw sack that feels like it's stuffed with splinters and dust. It's already collapsing in the middle, so you roll into a ditch every time you try to shift. Your blanket is a single piece of rough fabric that's itchy enough to feel like it was woven out of barbed wire. It doesn't cover you fully, so you spend your nights curling up to conserve heat, pressed shoulder to shoulder with men who haven't bathed in days, maybe weeks. If you're lucky, one of them doesn't kick in his sleep. If you're unlucky, the guy above you shifts at the wrong moment and drops a boot on your head. Sleep isn't something you get so much as something that occasionally ambushes you when exhaustion finally wrestles your body into unconsciousness. It never lasts long. The bugle, the barking sergeant, or just the guy next to you mumbling in his dreams about food and women he'll never see again. It all cuts through what little rest you manage to scrape together. You blink awake with eyes that burn and a throat that's dry because the air inside is thick with smoke from the single stove that struggles to warm this human barn. The fire isn't enough to make you comfortable. just enough to remind you what warmth could feel like if only there was more of it. And then there's the uniform hanging on the peg beside you. It looks sharp in propaganda posters, but in reality, it's a heavy wool tunic that already smells like wet dog. The boots, tall and stiff, are theoretically designed to protect you, but after a few hours of marching, they're just devices of torture, blister machines that gnaw at your heels until you bleed. Your helmet, polished once upon a time, is now dented and scratched, with a chin strap that cuts into your jaw if you wear it too long. This is the equipment you'll be expected to rely on every waking moment, and it already feels like it's plotting against you. You stretch, or try to. Every muscle is stiff from the hard planks you slept on. You're 20 years old, but your body feels twice that. Joints crack, shoulders ache. Your lower back is one long complaint. You want to groan, but you don't, because the last thing you need is to draw the attention of the corporal pacing the room with eyes sharp enough to cut. You don't belong to yourself anymore. You belong to orders, to the machine, to the endless demands of a regime that doesn't care whether you make it through today as long as you obey until you drop. When you sit up, hunger is already there, waiting for you. It's the kind of hollow emptiness that has been growing quietly for weeks. The rations never fill you. Black bread that crumbles into dust, thin soup that tastes like someone waved a carrot over boiling water but never actually let it fall in, and bitter ersatz coffee that somehow manages to be worse than drinking dirt. But that's not even the whole menu, because alongside your breakfast you'll be handed a little white tablet that promises to keep you awake, sharp, and ready to serve for days if needed. It's called Pervitin, and it's basically methamphetamine in pill form. You won't question it. You don't get to. The officer hands it out like candy, and you're expected to swallow it without a second thought. At first, you'll feel like you just got plugged into a wall socket. Your fatigue lifts. Your stomach quiets down. Your legs twitch with an energy that feels unnatural, like you could march across all of Europe without stopping. You don't care that your hands are shaking, or that your jaw feels wired tight, or that your thoughts start racing faster than you can keep up with, because this is war, and the one thing you can't afford is weakness. You need to stay awake, you need to keep going, you need to fight. And if that means turning yourself into a chemically boosted zombie soldier, so be it. The officers don't tell you about the crash that's coming. They don't mention that when the high wears off, you'll feel like every nerve in your body is being scraped raw. They don't warn you that paranoia will creep in, that hallucinations will blur the line between real and imagined. They just want you sharp for today, alive for tomorrow. And after that, you're replaceable anyway. There's always another recruit waiting in line. Around you, the other soldiers stir. Some laugh too loudly, their voices edged with the artificial confidence of men who haven't slept in 2 days, but think they could fight a tank with their bare hands. Others sit quietly, eyes darting, jaws clenching, their bodies already bearing the marks of chemical dependence. You're all in the same trap, pushed forward by fear of punishment from your own side as much as from the enemy's bullets. And make no mistake, punishment is everywhere. Fall behind in the march, and you'll be kicked until you get back up. Speak out of line, and you'll taste the back of a sergeant's hand or worse. Question orders, and you'll disappear. The war machine doesn't tolerate hesitation. You're expected to function like a cog, not a human. The pills just make sure the cog spins longer before it breaks. Outside, the air is sharp with cold. Dawn hasn't fully arrived, and the world is painted in grey. The ground crunches under boots as men shuffle into formation. The clatter of rifles, the bark of commands, the metallic echo of discipline, all of it builds into a rhythm that's supposed to make you feel like part of something greater. But mostly, it makes you feel small, anonymous, and trapped. You're one of thousands, a body in a uniform, a number on a list. If you vanish tomorrow, nobody beyond this unit will even notice. You tell yourself you're fighting for the fatherland, that you're defending something noble, but deep down, you know it's mostly survival. You obey because disobedience means immediate death. You swallow the pills because without them, you'd collapse. You march because standing still isn't an option. And as the line begins to move, your stomach growls again. You wonder if today's rations will at least be edible, or if you'll have to choke down bread that tastes like sawdust. You wonder how long before the meth turns your hands into claws, before your thoughts fracture into paranoia, before your body refuses to carry you any further, but you keep moving, because everyone else is moving. And stopping means pain, humiliation, or worse. This is how your day begins. A stomach that's empty, a mind that's buzzing, and a body that already hates you. The war has only just started for you, and already you know you won't be the same by the time it's over. If you're lucky enough to see the end at all. You open your eyes to the sound of boots striking wood. It's not the polite kind of sound either. It's the deliberate stomp of authority, the noise made by someone who wants you to know they own your morning before you even remember your name. The barracks are still half dark, but there's no such thing as sleeping in. The sergeant has already been awake for hours, fueled on cigarettes and hate, and he's ready to make sure you suffer the same fate. The room smells like the inside of a meat locker that's been used as a smoking lounge. Dozens of men packed into a wooden hall with no real ventilation, all sweating through wool blankets, breathing out sour fumes of alcohol, coughs and bad dreams. Every cough echoes. Every shuffle of straw in the mattresses sounds like a reminder that you're not home, you're not safe, and you're not even a person anymore. You're property. Property with boots that need to be on the floor right now. You roll off the bunk, or more accurately, you fall out of it. The straw mattress was never designed for comfort, just for the vague idea of keeping bones off wood. But after a few months, the straw breaks down into clumps, so every time you move, you're basically lying on a sack full of twigs and dust. Your back is scratched raw from it, your neck stiff, and your hips sore from pressing into uneven ridges all night. The blanket hasn't been washed in months, maybe ever, and it smells like sweat, mould, and whatever the last guy who used it died of. You'd complain, but the complaints would bounce off the walls and come back in the form of extra drills. So you stay quiet. Around you, men are groaning awake, some faster than others. One poor bastard takes too long, and immediately the sergeant's boot is on his bed frame, shaking the whole thing like it's about to collapse. There's no snooze button here. You wake up when you're told, or you wake up with a bruise. Some men scramble so fast they trip into each other, bumping shoulders in the cramped aisles between bunks, while others try to move slower, hoping not to be noticed. But nobody escapes the noise. The barked orders, the clatter of metal as rifles are lifted, the shuffle of boots, it all merges into a rhythm. The rhythm of the machine that now controls you. The air is cold enough to bite. You can see your own breath as you tug on the scratchy wool uniform waiting by your bunk. The tunic is heavy, stiff from dried sweat, and always just slightly damp. The trousers are rough, coarse fabric that rubs your skin raw after a few hours of marching. The boots are already stiff with old mud, and the leather bites into your ankles like it's trying to saw through them. You lace them up anyway, because bare feet are worse. Blisters are guaranteed either way, but at least with boots you might avoid frostbite. You stand in line, waiting for the next round of shouting. Your helmet dangles from your hand, dented from someone else's mistake before it was ever issued to you. The chin strap cuts into your face when you wear it, but you'll put it on anyway, because a dented helmet is still better than no helmet. The rifle leans against the wall beside you. It's long, heavy, and smells faintly of oil and old gunpowder. You've been trained to treat it like an extension of your body, but the truth is, it feels more like a parasite, weighing you down everywhere you go. Breakfast is announced, and it's nothing to celebrate. A ladle of thin grey soup that tastes like sadness boiled in water. A slice of black bread dense enough to use as a weapon, and a cup of ersatz coffee that smells like someone burned chicory and called it a beverage. But there's a bonus waiting at the end of the table, something small enough to fit between two fingers, something the officers smile about as they drop it into your palm. A white pill, smooth, unremarkable, and absolutely essential. Pervitin. Meth in its purest government-issued form. You pop it without hesitation, just like everyone else. You don't ask what it will do to your heart, your brain, your future. You only care about the next few hours, because the alternative is collapse. And collapse means punishment. Within minutes, the edges of the morning sharpen. The cold doesn't sting as much. The hunger gnawing at your stomach quiets down. The ache in your legs from yesterday's march feels distant, muffled, like someone else's problem. Your thoughts move faster, brighter, buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. You feel like you could run through a wall. You know you probably can't, but the pill doesn't care about reality. It just wants you awake, alert, obedient, and moving forward. The officers love it. A platoon of soldiers on meth doesn't complain as much. They march farther, fight longer, and collapse later. You're not a man anymore. You're a chemically engineered tool, and tools don't ask questions. The sergeant shouts an order, and your body moves before your brain has time to think about it. Discipline, they call it. Addiction, you'll realise later. But for now, you're buzzing, wide-eyed, ready to run straight into the meat grinder of history without blinking. Your bunkmate wipes his nose with his sleeve, eyes bloodshot, pupils wide. He hasn't slept in 2 days, but the pills keep him moving. Another soldier mutters too quickly, his words tripping over each other as if his mouth can't keep up with his thoughts. A third laughs too loud at nothing, clutching his rifle like it's a joke only he understands. These aren't the faces of heroes. They're the faces of men broken down and wired up, jittering on government speed. And you're one of them now. The sergeant checks the rows, scanning for weakness. His boots click against the wooden floor like a metronome of dread. If he catches you slouching, you'll pay for it. If he decides you're too slow, you'll run laps until your lungs scream. Fear is as much a part of the routine as the pills and the drills. It keeps you upright even when exhaustion claws at your spine. Outside, the sun finally drags itself over the horizon, but it doesn't bring warmth. The sky is a dull grey, and the air bites harder once you leave the barracks. Formation is immediate, rifles clutched to your chest, helmets on, boots in line. The ground crunches with frost, and your breath rises in clouds, merging with the smoke from chimneys in the distance. Somewhere, civilians are starting their mornings too, but you don't get to think about them. Your world is orders, uniforms, and the endless rhythm of marching feet. The first command of the day is shouted, and just like that, you're moving. The pill has already taken hold, and your legs swing into step as if they were waiting for permission. The hunger that gnawed at you earlier is gone, replaced by a strange emptiness that feels almost comforting. Your stomach isn't satisfied, it's simply silenced. Your chest thuds harder than usual, but the rhythm keeps you steady. For now, you feel invincible. For now, you believe you can keep going forever. But somewhere deep inside, your body knows the truth. Every pill is another crack in the foundation. Every sleepless night is another weight dragging you down. And sooner or later, the high will wear off. But you don't think about that now. You're not allowed to. There's no room for doubt, no room for weakness. Just the sound of boots hitting the frozen earth, the bark of the sergeant's commands, and the knowledge that this is only the beginning of another endless day. You shuffle forward with the rest of the unit, the line moving slow but steady, like cattle waiting for their turn at the trough. Nobody talks much. Conversations don't happen here in the mornings, at least not real ones. Just mutters, coughs, the occasional curse under the breath when someone's boot scrapes too hard against the floor. The air is still thick with sleep, and the sour odour of sweat that never really leaves, no matter how much tobacco smoke tries to cover it. You're already hungry, and you already know the hunger isn't going anywhere. The meal hall isn't much of a hall. It's just another long wooden room with benches shoved together, the kind of place where noise echoes too loudly, but nobody laughs. You sit where you're told, you hold out your mess tin, and you get whatever ladle of despair they're serving today. The cook doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. He just shoves the ladle in, splashes something grey and watery into the tin, and moves to the next man. That's your breakfast. Thin soup that's more water than anything else, flecked with a few limp vegetables floating like they're trying to escape. Maybe a potato if you're lucky. More likely just a chunk of something unidentifiable, boiled into submission until all it tastes like is sadness and heat. Next comes the bread. They call it bread. You call it a brick disguised as food. Black bread, dense and coarse, so dry it crumbles into dust when you bite into it, except the middle, which is damp and sticky from sitting too long in storage. Sometimes you get lucky and it's just stale. Sometimes you're less lucky and it's crawling with tiny little guests that wriggle when you pull it apart. The trick is not to look too closely. You just eat it, bugs and all, because hunger doesn't give you the luxury of disgust. A stomach doesn't care if you swallow bread, mould, or beetles, as long as something's inside to fill the void. Then there's the coffee. Not real coffee. Not even close. Ersatz coffee, brewed from roasted barley, chicory, or whatever else they could scrape together to trick the brain into thinking it's caffeinated. It smells bitter, it tastes worse, and it leaves a film on your tongue that no amount of water will wash away. Not that you have clean water anyway. You sip it anyway, because it's hot. And hot means something on mornings where the frost still clings to the window panes and your fingers are stiff inside your gloves. But none of that is what matters. The bread, the soup, the ersatz coffee, they're just background noise. The real main course is the pill. The officer stands at the end of the line, a box in his hand. He drops a small white tablet into your palm without a word. You don't question it. You don't even hesitate. It's routine now. You toss it into your mouth, swallow it dry and wait. That's Pervitin. Methamphetamine, courtesy of the German military. The breakfast of champions. Within minutes, you feel it. The fog in your head clears, your eyelids stop dragging like sandbags, and your legs start to twitch with restless energy. The hunger gnawing in your gut dulls down to something manageable, almost forgotten. The fatigue weighing on your bones? Gone. It's like someone flipped a switch and your body remembered it still has fuel, even though it doesn't. You could march for hours. You could stay awake for days. You could fight until your knuckles bled and still keep going. That's what the pill tells you anyway. Look around the room and you can see it hitting everyone else too. Men who looked half dead a moment ago suddenly sit up straighter, eyes wide, hands tapping against the table like they're keeping time with some invisible song. One guy grins for no reason, chewing his bread like it's the best thing he's ever tasted. Another's jaw tightens, his teeth grinding, as if his body doesn't know what to do with all the buzzing inside him. They're all waking up now, not naturally, but chemically. The officers like it that way. A soldier with meth in his system doesn't complain about sore feet or empty stomachs. A soldier with meth doesn't collapse from exhaustion. At least not right away. Nobody talks about the side effects. Nobody mentions the way your heart pounds like a drum in your chest, faster and harder than feels normal. Nobody mentions the dry mouth, the jitters, the way your thoughts start racing like a runaway train, faster than you can keep up with. Nobody talks about the crash, when the pill wears off and you're left shaking, paranoid, and so tired you feel like you could sleep for a week but can't manage a single minute. That's tomorrow's problem. Today you're sharp, and that's all that matters. You finish the bread, wash it down with bitter ersatz coffee, and scrape the last of the watery soup from the bottom of your tin. It doesn't matter that you're still hungry. The pill has already convinced your brain that it doesn't need food. Not now. You'll pay for that later when your stomach cramps and your body weakens. But in this moment, you feel wired, alert, ready. Ready for whatever the officers want you to be ready for. That's the point. One of the men beside you mutters something under his breath. Too fast. Words spilling out like he's trying to catch them before they escape. Another stares down at his tin, eyes wide, hand shaking as he grips the spoon like it's a weapon. Across the table, a man bursts out laughing suddenly, choking on his bread as if he just heard the funniest joke in the world. The room isn't full of soldiers anymore. It's full of men teetering on the edge of chemical frenzy, all pretending it's normal, because pretending is easier than admitting what's happening to you. The officers pretend too. They call it discipline, they call it efficiency, they call it the edge that will keep you alive on the battlefield. But really, it's just another leash. Another way to keep you moving when every natural part of your body is screaming to stop. The pills don't make you stronger. They make you numb. They make you too wired to notice how much you're breaking down. You sit there, tin empty, pill buzzing in your veins, watching the others twitch and mutter and grind their teeth, and you realise something. Breakfast isn't food anymore. Breakfast is control. The The soup fills the space in your stomach. The bread grinds against your teeth. The ersatz coffee burns your tongue. But the pill, that's the real meal. That's what the army feeds you. Not nutrition. Not comfort. Chemicals. Energy borrowed from a future you might not live long enough to see. The sergeant barks an order, and every man in the room jerks to attention, moving faster than they should, fueled by the meth coursing through their systems. Tin slammed onto tables, boots scraping against the floor, rifles lifted and clutched like lifelines. There's no hesitation now. No groggy yawns, no dragging feet. Just motion, sharp and immediate. The breakfast of champions has done its job. You sling your rifle over your shoulder, helmet clutched in one hand, and follow the others out into the cold. Your stomach is still empty, your body still aching from yesterday's march, but your brain doesn't care. It's running on borrowed energy, borrowed time. The officers don't care either. As long as you keep moving, as long as you keep fighting, as long as you keep obeying, the machine keeps turning. And as you step into formation, heart pounding, breath sharp, eyes wide, you can feel it. The pill is in control now. Not you. The line moves out of the hall and into the yard, boots striking against frozen ground in near unison. The pill has kicked in, and that jittery rush in your veins pushes your body forward even though your stomach still feels hollow, and your shoulders ache from carrying the same rifle you've been dragging around for weeks. But before the first march of the day even begins, you're reminded of another misery you can't escape. Your uniform. At first glance it might look sharp. Photographs back home show clean lines, pressed wool, buttons shining like polished medals. In posters, it's crisp, almost elegant, the kind of uniform meant to make a man look like part of an unstoppable machine. That's the illusion. In reality, it's a prison you wear. A straitjacket of wool and leather that spends every waking moment reminding you that comfort is something you left behind the moment you signed your life away. The tunic is heavy. Not the kind of heavy that makes you feel secure, but the kind that sits on your shoulders like a sack of wet stones. The wool scratches against your skin constantly, and after hours of wear, you feel like you've been wrapped in sandpaper. Sweat builds up underneath, trapped by the coarse fabric, leaving damp patches that never dry. You itch constantly. Your armpits, your waist, your back, and scratching only makes it worse. But you scratch anyway, because ignoring it is impossible. Underneath, the shirt you wear is no better. Thin cotton, stiff with old sweat, and barely rinsed in weeks. The laundry system is simple. There isn't one. If you want your clothes clean, you find a river. You find some cold water, and you scrub until your fingers ache. Soap is a luxury, and most of the time you just give up, hang the shirt to dry, and convince yourself the stink is at least less noticeable than before. Then you put it back on, still stiff, still sour, and carry on like you're not living in your own filth. The trousers are another story. Cut from the same coarse wool, they're stiff, unyielding, and rub in all the wrong places. After a few hours of marching, the seams grind against your thighs until the skin turns raw. Every step after that feels like dragging sandpaper across an open wound. You try to shift, to adjust, but there's no escaping it. And if you're unlucky enough to sweat heavily, the fabric clings, sticking to your skin until it feels like you're wrapped in a damp towel made of needles. Then there are the boots, tall, stiff leather that's supposed to protect you, but instead becomes your greatest enemy. They were never made for your feet specifically. They're one size fits most, handed to you with no regard for fit or comfort. Too tight, and they cut into your toes until your nails bruise and blacken. Too loose, and they rub your heels raw with every step, leaving blisters the size of coins that pop and ooze before the day is even over. Socks are rationed and thin, offering almost no protection. By the time you've marched 10 kilometres, your feet are a mess of cuts, sores, and damp patches where the skin is peeling away, and you still have kilometres left to go. The leather itself never softens, no matter how much you wear it. Instead it stiffens, warps, and cracks in places that dig into your ankles and calves. Mud cakes around the soles, and no matter how much you scrape it off, it's back within an hour. The smell never leaves either. Sweat, damp, and rot combine into something that clings to the air when you finally take them off, filling the barracks like a punishment. The belt is another cruel joke. Thick leather, cinched tight around your waist, designed to hold your ammunition pouches, canteen, and whatever else the army thinks you need to drag along. After a few hours, it digs into your stomach, leaving deep grooves in your skin. Sit down for a moment, and it cuts in even worse, pressing against your ribs until you're gasping. But it's not optional. You wear it, and you keep it tight, or you'll hear about it from the sergeant. The belt isn't just a tool, it's another leash. A reminder that your body isn't yours anymore. On your head the helmet, steel, heavy, and always colder than the air around you. The inside is padded with leather straps that are supposed to keep it snug, but instead they dig into your scalp until you've got red marks pressed into your skin. The chin strap is worse. Tight enough to hold it in place, but tight enough to rub your jaw raw. You wear it anyway because the alternative is worse. A helmet that slips, shifts, or falls off at the wrong time could cost you more than a bruise. It could cost you your life. Every piece of this uniform is designed for durability, not comfort. And durability means it will outlast you. The tunic will still be here when your skin is worn raw beneath it. The boots will still stand tall when your feet collapse inside them. The helmet will still gleam with scratches and dents long after you're gone. You don't wear the uniform wears you down. And then there are the accessories. Gloves that never fit right, stiff and clumsy, making it harder to hold your rifle. A canteen made of tin that leaves your water tasting like rust and metal shavings. A gas mask slung in its case, heavy against your side, useless most of the time, but always there to remind you of what might come. Ammunition pouches banging against your thighs when you march, bruising your skin, but never shifting no matter how many times you adjust them. The rifle strap digging into your shoulder until you lose feeling in your arm. Everything you carry feels like a punishment, and none of it feels optional. The propaganda posters back home don't show this part. They don't show the red rashes, the bleeding blisters, the constant itch of wool against skin. They don't show soldiers limping in line, feet wrapped in bandages that soak through with blood before the day is done. They don't show men scratching their thighs raw under coarse trousers, wincing with every step, but too scared to fall out of line. They don't show men peeling their socks off at night and pulling skin with them, but that's reality. That's the uniform. It's not protection. It's not pride. It's just another layer of misery between you and the outside world. A cage made of wool, leather, and steel. A cage you can't take off. Not until you're told to. Not until the day is over. and sometimes not even then. And while you stand there, shifting in place, trying to ignore the burning itch on your back and the raw skin on your feet, the sergeant barks another order. You snap to attention, rifle clutched tight, boots slamming together with a sound that makes your blisters scream. You don't flinch, you don't show it, because the uniform isn't just misery, it's a test. A constant grinding reminder that you don't matter as much as the machine. And as long as you can stand, march and fight, the uniform will keep you here. You're not a man in clothes anymore. You're a soldier in armour made of suffering. And it's only the beginning of the day. You're lined up now, shoulder to shoulder with the others, boots planted on the frozen ground, rifle clutched tight against your chest. The uniform is already biting at your skin, the boots chewing into your feet, the pill buzzing in your veins. But none of that matters, not right now. What matters is standing perfectly still, eyes forward, mouth shut. This is roll call. And roll call is less about counting heads and more about reminding every single one of you that you are replaceable. The sergeant's voice cuts through the cold air like a whip. He barks names, one after another, rapid fire, his eyes scanning the line for any twitch, any stumble, any sign of hesitation. When your name comes, you shout back the word you've been trained to bark. Here, present, alive. It doesn't matter if you feel alive. It doesn't matter if your voice cracks or your throat burns. You answer loud, clear, immediate. Anything less, and you'll feel his boot in your ribs or his fist in your stomach before the next name is even called. You watch as he moves down the line, his eyes sharp, his lips curled in something between a sneer and a smile. He isn't looking for absences. He's looking for weakness. A slouch in the shoulders, a chin that dips too low, a pair of eyes that glance in the wrong direction. One man clears his throat too loudly, and the sergeant is on him instantly, barking in his face, spittle flying, the man's ears turning red as he tries not to flinch. The rest of you stare straight ahead, pretending not to notice. You never notice. Not unless you want the same treatment. The cold digs into your fingers, stiff even inside the gloves, but you don't move them. You don't shift your weight. You don't blink too often. Every second feels like an eternity, and your body screaming to move, to scratch, to adjust, but you hold still. Roll call is a performance, and any slip is a mistake, and mistakes are punished. The officers like to remind you that obedience is life. Not bravery, not skill, not intelligence. Obedience. You follow orders without question, without hesitation, without thought. That's what makes you useful. That's what keeps you alive. At least that's what they say. The truth is simpler. Obedience keeps you in line. It keeps the machine running. And if the machine runs smoother when you're silent and broken, then that's the way it will be. Another name is called, and there's silence. Just a second too long, but it's enough. The sergeant storms down the line, grabs the soldier by the collar, and drags him forward. The man stammers, voice cracking as he tries to shout his presence, but it's too late. The sergeant's boot slams into his shin, and he drops to one knee, gasping. The rest of you stare ahead, eyes fixed on nothing, pretending not to hear the man choking back a scream. You've all learned the lesson before. Don't be late. Don't hesitate. Don't make the sergeant repeat himself. When your name comes, you shout louder than you think you need to, the sound ripping from your throat like a barked confession. You feel the pill buzzing in your system, making your voice sharper, harsher, louder. For a second, you think maybe you shouted too loud. But no, the sergeant moves on without looking at you, and you feel the smallest flicker of relief. Not pride, never pride, just relief that today, for now, you didn't screw up. The roll call drags on, each name another second carved out of your patience. You don't think about food, about warmth, about home. You think only about staying upright, about keeping your eyes straight, about not drawing attention. Attention is danger. Attention is pain. When the last name is called, the sergeant doesn't dismiss you. He circles back, pacing the line like a wolf checking for weak prey. His boots crunch against the frost, his eyes darting from face to face, waiting for someone to blink wrong. One man sways slightly, just a fraction, his knees trembling under the weight of exhaustion. The sergeant spots it instantly. He slams the butt of his rifle against the ground, the sound cracking through the air like a gunshot, and the trembling man stiffens, wide-eyed. The sergeant steps closer, sneers in his face, and hisses something low enough you can't hear. Whatever it is, the man's lips clamp shut, his body rigid, as if fear alone is keeping him upright. Finally, after what feels like an hour but is probably only minutes, the sergeant barks the order. Dismissed. Not dismissed to rest, not dismissed to eat, but dismissed to march, to drill, to labour until the pill in your veins burns itself into ash. You shift your weight at last, the relief of moving almost painful as the blood rushes back into your stiff legs. Your shoulders ache from holding the rifle in place, your jaw tight from clenching. But you don't show it. You adjust your belt, tighten the strap of your helmet, and fall back into formation. Because this is the point. Roll call isn't about numbers. It isn't about knowing who's here and who isn't. It's about breaking you down. It's about reminding you that hesitation, weakness, individuality, they're punishable offences. It's about teaching you that your voice, your body, your life, they don't belong to you anymore. They belong to the orders. And as you march out of the yard, boots striking in rhythm, rifles bouncing against your shoulders, you can still hear the echo of the sergeant's voice in your head. Not the words themselves, but the tone, sharp, commanding, merciless. The kind of tone that worms its way into your bones until it feels like it's not just a voice you hear, but a voice you obey without thinking. You don't wonder why anymore. You don't question what comes next. You just move. Because obedience isn't optional. It's survival. And survival is the only reward the machine ever gives. The order comes down, and the line lurches into motion. Boots slam against the frozen dirt, one after another, an iron rhythm that doesn't stop once it starts. You don't set the pace. The pace is set for you. A steady, grinding tempo that eats up the ground beneath your feet mile after mile until time itself loses meaning. You march because you're told to march. You breathe because you're told to breathe. The pill buzzing in your veins makes sure of that. At first, it doesn't feel too bad. The meth does its work, numbing the aches in your joints, flooding your muscles with a false sense of energy. The cold air bites at your cheeks, but the pill makes your blood feel hot, rushing faster than it should. You feel sharper, quicker, more alive than you did just an hour ago. Your legs move automatically, a smooth mechanical swing, and you almost believe you could keep this up forever. Almost. But then reality starts to creep back in. The boots dig deeper into your heels, grinding blisters against raw skin. Each step feels like you're pressing fire into your soles, but you keep going, because stopping isn't an option. You shift your rifle on your shoulder, the strap carving a groove into your flesh, leaving a line of numbness that throbs every time you move. Sweat builds under the wool uniform, soaking your shirt, freezing instantly against your skin where the wind slips through the seams. You can feel the itch starting already, sweat mixing with dirt, fabric rubbing against raw patches on your thighs. You want to adjust, but you don't. You just keep marching. Around you, the line stretches on forever. Helmets bob up and down in perfect rhythm, rifles bouncing in unison, boots striking in a single, endless drumbeat. Nobody talks. Talking wastes breath. Talking draws attention. You just stare straight ahead, eyes fixed on the back of the man in front of you, as if his shoulders are the only thing holding you up. Your mind starts to wander, thoughts bouncing too quickly from the pill, too sharp to settle, too restless to focus. You imagine food, a bed, silence. Then the image shatters when the sergeant's voice barks another order, dragging you back to the rhythm of boots on dirt. The road stretches on, frozen ruts and patches of mud that cling to your soles like weights. Each step feels heavier, as if the ground itself is trying to hold you back. The pill pushes you forward anyway, overriding the screams of your muscles, forcing your legs to move even when they want to stop. You don't notice how fast your heart is pounding until you feel the thud in your throat, each beat like a hammer, too quick, too strong. You swallow hard, your mouth dry, tongue stuck to the roof, but you don't slow down. You can't. Hours pass, though you don't know how many. Time dissolves into steps. One, then another, then another. You stop counting after the first 1,000. You just keep moving, caught in a trance of motion and exhaustion. The pill makes you restless, but your body drags, caught between unnatural energy and crushing fatigue. It's a miserable balance, and the only way to deal with it is to stop thinking. So you stop thinking. You let the rhythm take over. Left, right, boots striking dirt, helmets bobbing, rifles bouncing. But no march is perfect. Someone always falters. A man a few rows ahead stumbles, his foot catching on a rut, and instantly the sergeant is on him, barking curses, shoving him back into line. The man's face is pale, eyes wide, sweat dripping down his temple despite the freezing air. He's wobbling, but the threat of the sergeant's boot keeps him upright. You can see it in his eyes. He's running on empty, his pill spent, his body giving up. But he keeps moving. He has to. Because falling out of line isn't just weakness, it's danger. It's punishment. It's shame. Your own legs start to feel heavier, the buzz of the pill turning sour. Your body screaming for rest you know you won't get. The rifle feels heavier too, the strap digging deeper into your shoulder until it's hard to tell where the rifle ends and you begin. The canteen bangs against your hip with every step, empty, useless, just another piece of metal to carry. You think about water, clean, cold, clear water, and your throat aches with longing. But you don't stop. You don't even slow down. You just march. The scenery doesn't change much. Trees, fields, the occasional ruined building on the horizon. All of it blurs together into a smear of grey and brown. You stop noticing the details. You only notice the road, the boots in front of you, the weight on your shoulders. The pill keeps your eyes wide, your mind racing, but there's nothing to hold on to. Just the endless, grinding motion of feet against dirt. Eventually, the pain starts to fade. Not because it's gone, but because it becomes normal. The blisters, the cramps, the burning in your thighs, it all melts into the background hum of existence. You stop thinking about stopping. You stop imagining rest. You just move. Step after step after step. Like a cog in a machine that never stops turning. But the cracks are showing. The man beside you mutters under his breath, words tumbling too fast, nonsense syllables spilling from his lips. His eyes are wide, darting side to side, seeing things that aren't there. Another man's jaw works constantly, grinding his teeth so hard you can hear it over the crunch of boots. A third suddenly bursts into a laugh that doesn't sound like laughter at all, more like a bark, sharp and hollow. You don't join in. You just stare forward, pretending not to notice, because noticing means admitting it's happening to you too. And it is. Your thoughts are too fast, racing ahead of you, colliding with each other, until nothing makes sense. 1 second you're imagining food, the next you're back in line, the next you're convinced something is watching you from the tree line. You blink, shake your head, try to focus, but the pill keeps pushing, keeps pulling, keeps twisting your mind into knots. You're awake, more awake than you've ever been, but it's the kind of awake that burns. The march doesn't end when the sun dips. It doesn't end when the cold deepens. It doesn't end when your body screams louder than the sergeant. It only ends when they say it ends. And until then, you keep moving, fueled by chemicals, driven by fear, broken down step by step. When finally, mercifully, the order comes to halt, your body nearly collapses under the sudden stillness. Your legs tremble, your knees ache, your shoulders sag under the rifle. You want to drop it, to drop everything, to just lie down in the dirt and let the world pass you by. But you don't. You stand in place, chest heaving, breath sharp, waiting for the next command. Because there's always another command, always another march, always another pill. You don't wonder how many miles you've walked. You don't care. The number doesn't matter. The road doesn't end. The march doesn't stop. Not while the machine still needs bodies to move it forward. Not while the pill still buzzes in your veins. You're not marching to a destination. You're marching because you're told to march, and you'll keep marching until your boots wear through, until your feet give out, until the pill finally fails to keep you upright. And when that happens, you'll collapse. But for now, you move, step after step after step, into the endless grind. The order finally comes to halt, and you think maybe, just maybe, you're going to rest. But rest isn't what's waiting. What's waiting is a hole in the ground. A long scar carved into the frozen earth, rimmed with barbed wire, lined with wood that's already rotting from damp. This is where you live now. The trench. You climb down the muddy ladder, boots sliding, rifle clutched tight against your chest. And the first thing that hits you isn't the sight. It's the smell. Damp earth, rotting wood, human sweat, gunpowder, and something sour that you know is piss but try to ignore. It hangs in the air like a blanket, clinging to your nose, sinking into your uniform. The trench doesn't smell like death yet. Not today. But it smells close enough that you can imagine what it'll be like when it does. The mud is alive. It sucks at your boots, pulls at your soles, grips like it doesn't want to let go. Every step is a fight, and after a few meters, your feet are already soaked through, socks squelching, blisters softening into raw, bleeding wounds. You can't keep clean here. You can't keep dry. You can't keep anything but the mud. It gets into your trousers, your socks, under your fingernails, in your food. When you try to lie down, it seeps into your blanket, your skin, your hair. There is no escaping it. You crouch against the side, the wooden planks slick with slime, and look around. The trench walls close you in like a coffin without a lid. The sky above is grey, the air heavy, the horizon distant and unreachable. Rats scurry along the beams, bold as soldiers themselves, fat from feeding on whatever scraps they can find. You don't want to think about what else they've been eating, but you know. Everyone knows. The sound never stops. Artillery in the distance, a constant thump that rattles your teeth. Machine gun bursts, sharp and sudden, cutting through the morning like saw blades. Voices shouting down the line, orders passed along until they lose meaning. And beneath it all, the soft, steady sound of dripping. Water seeping into the trench, drop by drop, soaking everything. You start to wonder if the mud is going to swallow the whole army before the enemy even has to fire another shot. Fear doesn't come in waves here. It sits in your stomach like a permanent knot. You don't know when the next shell will land, or if it will land here. You don't know if the enemy is watching right now, waiting for you to lift your head a little too high. You don't know if the man beside you will still be breathing in an hour. Every second is a question, and the answers are always bad. You pull your helmet lower, grip your rifle tighter, and try to steady your breathing. The pill in your system doesn't help. It sharpens everything. Every sound feels louder, every shadow darker, every movement too fast. Your heart pounds so hard you're sure it's giving away your position. The man next to you lights a cigarette, his hands shaking, the flame flickering, and you want to scream at him to put it out before it draws fire. But you don't. You just stare at the glow, eyes wide, waiting, then it comes. The whistle of incoming shells, high-pitched, rising, falling, and then the earth itself explodes. The ground shakes, dirt flies, men throw themselves flat against the mud as chunks of metal tear through the air. Your ears ring, the world goes white, and for a moment you're sure that was it, that you're gone, that your body is already scattered across the trench. But you open your eyes, and you're still here, covered in mud, shaking, ears screaming, but alive. The man 2 spots down isn't. His body crumples against the wall, helmet dented, blood seeping into the mud until it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. Nobody moves him. Nobody can. There isn't time. Another shell lands, closer this time, spraying shards of metal across the line. You duck, grip your rifle so tight your knuckles turn white, and press yourself deeper into the dirt, as if the earth might swallow you and keep you safe. Fear has a taste, is metallic, like blood. It coats your tongue, mixes with the grit of mud and a bitter tang of smoke. You swallow it down, but it stays. Your stomach churns, your throat tightens, but you don't throw up. You can't. Not here. Not with the sergeant watching. Not with the shells still falling. The hours drag. You lose track of time, of the sun, of the difference between minutes and hours. You only know the rhythm, the whistle, the boom, the ringing, the silence that follows before it starts again. Sometimes the silence is worse. At least when the shells fall, you know where the danger is. When it's quiet, you're left waiting, tense, paranoid, your body stiff with dread. The trench is too narrow for comfort, too wide to feel safe. Men huddle in groups, pressed against the walls, their faces pale, their eyes blank. Some mutter prayers under their breath, lips moving silently as if God has time to listen here. Others just stare ahead, their jaws tight, their teeth grinding. You can't tell which is worse, believing someone might save you, or knowing no one will. When the order finally comes, it isn't relief. It's terror with a new name. You're told to move forward, to climb out of the trench, to run across the open ground, to charge into the mud and barbed wire and machine gun fire. Your stomach drops, your legs tremble, but the pill in your veins doesn't let you hesitate. You move because you're told to move, because hesitation is death before the bullets even hit. You scramble up the side, boots slipping, mud grabbing at your legs, and then you're on the surface. The air is colder up here, sharper, filled with smoke and dirt. The ground stretches ahead, a wasteland of craters, broken trees, and twisted metal. You run anyway, rifle clutched tight, helmet rattling against your head, heart pounding loud enough to drown out the thunder of the guns. Bullets snap past you, sharp cracks that sound closer than they should. Men fall around you, some with screams, some with nothing at all. You don't stop. You don't even look. You just run, duck, crawl, scramble, driven by fear, by the pill, by the orders screaming in your head. Shrapnel tears into the ground, throwing dirt and metal into the air. A piece whistles past your ear, close enough you can feel heat. Another man drops beside you, clutching his stomach, blood pouring through his fingers. You don't help him. You can't. You keep moving, because if you stop, you're next. By the time you hit the next stretch of cover, you're shaking so hard you can barely hold your rifle. Your lungs burn, your legs ache, your throat is raw from breathing smoke and dirt. But you're alive. Alive in a field littered with bodies. Alive in a trench that reeks of piss and blood. Alive in a world that seems determined to make you regret it. This is what the pill is for. Not to make you strong, not to make you brave, but to make you numb enough to run headlong into hell without thinking. To make you obey when every part of your body is screaming to stop. To keep you alive just long enough to use you up. The fear doesn't fade. It doesn't even lessen. It just becomes part of you, woven into your muscles, your heartbeat, your breath. You don't ask if you'll survive the next shell, the next burst of gunfire, the next charge. You already know the answer. Maybe, maybe not. The only certainty is that you'll keep moving until you can't. And when the silence falls again, when the guns stop for just a moment, you'll crouch in the mud, your rifle clutched tight, your teeth chattering, and you'll taste it again. The mud, the smoke, the fear, always the fear. The guns fall silent, at least for the moment, and you think maybe the world is giving you a break. It isn't. It never is. The silence isn't peace, it's tension. A pause before the next scream, the next shell, the next order to throw yourself into the mud again. You slump against the trench wall, your rifle across your lap, your chest heaving, ears still ringing from the bombardment. Your whole body is vibrating, though you don't know if it's from the cold, the shock, or the little white pill buzzing in your blood like a nest of angry hornets. It's been 2 days since you really slept. Maybe 3. You can't tell anymore. Time is a blur, broken into stretches of marching, fighting and crouching in the dirt, waiting for something to fall out of the sky and kill you. Normally, by now, you'd be collapsing, but the pill won't let you. Your body is shaking, Your eyelids are heavy, your head feels stuffed with cotton, but the meth drags you upright, keeps your eyes wide, forces your legs to move. You're exhausted and wired at the same time, a paradox that hurts in ways you can't describe. The hallucinations creep in slowly at first, a shadow that moves when nothing's there, a voice calling your name, low and familiar, when the man beside you hasn't spoken in hours. You blink hard, shake your head, try to snap out of it, but the images keep coming. A flicker of movement at the edge of the trench, gone when you turn. A figure in the distance, standing in the mist, watching. You raise your rifle, blink again, and the figure dissolves into a tree stump. The worst part is you can't tell what's real anymore. Every sound makes you jump. The creak of wood sounds like boots on the ladder. The drip of water echoes like footsteps in the mud. Sometimes you swear you hear laughter, high-pitched and cruel, coming from the shadows. Other times it's whispers, too soft to make out, curling in your ears like smoke. You glance at the others, hoping they've heard it too, but their eyes are as wide as yours. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe you're all too far gone to tell the difference. The pill keeps you awake, but it doesn't keep you sane. Your thoughts move too fast, tripping over each other, colliding into fragments that never settle. You start remembering things that never happened. A meal you never ate. A letter from home you never received. The face of a woman you've never met, smiling at you from the smoke. You know it isn't real, but knowing doesn't help. The images are sharp, brighter than reality, burned into your brain until you can't blink them away. You try to focus on the rifle in your hands. Something solid, something real. But even that starts to slip. The wood feels like it's breathing, pulsing against your palms. The metal glints strangely, as if it's alive. You clench your teeth, squeeze harder, but it doesn't help. The rifle feels less like a weapon and more like a living thing that might decide to betray you at any moment. Sleep tries to drag you under, but the pill yanks you back up. Your eyelids close for seconds at a time, just long enough for your mind to start dreaming, and then they snap open again, jerking you back into the nightmare of reality. Except, sometimes the dreams linger. You see things that aren't there, even with your eyes open. A rat scurries across your lap, except it doesn't. A hand grabs your shoulder, except no one's there. A face peers over the trench wall, except it vanishes when you blink. The line between dream and waking is gone. You're caught in a limbo where both feel the same. You don't know if the shell that just landed was real, or if it only happened in your head. You don't know if the man beside you is breathing, or if you only imagine the rise and fall of his chest. You don't know if you're alive, or if this is some fever dream playing out in the mud. All you know is that you can't stop. You can't rest. You can't escape. The officers don't care. They see your wide eyes, your trembling hands, your frantic energy, and they think it's good. They think you're sharp, alert, ready. They don't see the cracks. Or maybe they do, and just don't care. Cracks can be patched with another pill, another order, another shove forward into the grinder. As long as you're upright, you're useful. And if you collapse, there's another man waiting to take your place. The hallucinations grow darker as the night stretches on. The shadows aren't just shadows anymore. They move with purpose, crawling up the trench walls, reaching for you with hands you can almost feel. The whispers get louder, forming words now, words you don't want to hear. They tell you you're already dead. They tell you the war will never end. They tell you the only way out is to stop fighting. You press your hands to your ears, but the whispers are inside your head, coiled around your brain, impossible to block out. You see faces too. Faces of men you know, men who've already died. They stand in the mud, their eyes empty, their mouths moving soundlessly. You look away, but when you look back, they're still there, closer now, staring. One reaches out a hand, fingers skeletal, mud dripping from the bones. You flinch, blink, and it's gone. Just mud, just shadows, just your mind eating itself alive. Your heart races, pounding so hard it hurts. Your skin crawls, your hands shake, your teeth grind together until your jaw aches. You want to scream, to let it all out, but you don't. You swallow it, force it down, keep your mouth shut. Because screaming would mean breaking. And breaking would mean punishment, or worse. The hours stretch into forever. The night is endless, the mud eternal, the whispers constant. You're trapped in a loop of fear and exhaustion. Your body pushed past its limit, but kept upright by chemicals that don't care if you shatter. You don't know if the sun will rise again. You don't know if you'll see it if it does. You don't know if you'll even be here when it happens. When morning finally drags itself over the horizon, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like another trick. The light doesn't chase away the shadows, it only changes their shape. The whispers don't stop. They just grow quieter, lurking in the background. The hallucinations don't vanish. They just become harder to separate from reality. You stand when you're told, legs trembling, body aching, eyes burning, but you stand. You move when you're ordered, rifle clutched in shaking hands, helmet rattling on your head. You obey, because that's all you can do. You're not awake. You're not asleep. You're something in between. Something twisted. Something hollow. A body kept alive by chemicals. A mind unravelling one hallucination at a time. This is the front. Not just mud, not just blood, not just shrapnel, but dreams that aren't dreams. Visions that won't leave. A mind that can't tell what's real anymore. This is what the pill has brought you. Not clarity, not strength, but a waking nightmare you can't escape. And as the line starts to move again, boots squelching in the mud, rifles clattering, orders barking, you follow, because the pill tells you to, because the sergeant tells you to, because there's no other choice. You march, you obey, you hallucinate, and the war goes on. When the shooting slows down, when the shells stop falling for long enough that your ears aren't ringing like church bells, the officers tell you to write. Not fight, not march, not dig, not even sleep. Write a letter home. A letter to the family you haven't seen in months, maybe years. A letter to prove you're still alive, still standing, still part of the machine. The problem is, there isn't much you can write. The mud, the fear, the hallucinations, the taste of smoke and blood in the back of your throat. None of that makes it past the paper. You sit on an overturned ammunition crate, pencil stub in your hand, paper rough and yellowed, staring at the blank space. Your fingers tremble from exhaustion and chemicals, your knuckles raw from gripping a rifle, and you wonder what lies to put down this time. Because that's all it can be. Lies. You can't write the truth. If you write that your trench is a swamp that smells like piss and rot, the censors will blot it out. If you write that half your unit is dead, that men cough blood into their hands, that the rats crawl over your face at night, the censors will blot it out. If you write that the only thing keeping you moving is a pill that makes your heart feel like it's about to burst, the censors will blot it out. They don't want truth. They want stories. Stories of discipline, of courage, of honour. Stories they can wave in front of the civilians back home to remind them that the war is worth it. So you lie. You write that you're doing well, that the weather is fine, even though your socks haven't been dry in months, that the food is good, even though your stomach aches constantly from bread that tastes like sawdust and soup that smells like dishwater. That morale is high, even though half the men around you look like walking corpses with rifles. You write that the officers treat you fairly, that your comrades are strong, that you believe in victory. You don't believe any of it, but you write it anyway, because it's easier, because it's expected, because the censor will cross it all out if you don't. You add little details too, the kinds of details that sound real enough to be comforting but vague enough to slip past the red ink. You tell your mother you're keeping warm, even though the only warmth you feel is the fever burning under your skin. You tell your father you're making him proud, even though you don't know if he's still alive to read it. You tell your wife or sweetheart you think of her every night, even though the only thing in your head at night is the sound of shells and the sight of faces that won't stop appearing in the mud. You fold the lies carefully, slip them into the envelope, and hand them off. Then you wait. Waiting for letters back is its own kind of torture. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. When they do, they're censored too. Words blacked out, whole sentences missing, details blurred. You can see the careful optimism in the handwriting, the forced cheer in the words. They tell you life is fine, that the farm is running, that the children are growing, that everyone prays for you. But you know there are things they aren't allowed to say. Deaths that aren't mentioned. Hardships that are erased with a single line of ink. Every letter is a half-truth, a sanitized fragment of a life you barely recognize anymore. Some men don't get letters at all. Their families are gone, bombed out, deported, displaced. They wait anyway, staring at the mail sacks with eyes hollow and desperate, as if a miracle might slip through. Others clutch their letters like lifelines, reading them over and over until the paper falls apart, pretending the words are enough to hold back the misery around them. Some hide the letters under their shirts, pressed against their chests, as if the words themselves could shield them from shrapnel. And then there are the men who get the worst letters of all, the ones that say nothing, the ones where the handwriting is different, shaky, the ink smudged from tears, the ones that tell them their mother, their father, their wife, their child won't be writing anymore. Those letters don't get read aloud. They get folded, tucked away, or torn to pieces in shaking hands. No one talks about them. No one needs to. The look on the man's face is enough. But whether you get a letter or not, whether the words are lies or half-truths or silent grief, the result is the same. You still sit in the mud, rifle in hand, heart pounding from chemicals, stomach growling from hunger. Nothing changes. The letters don't make the food taste better. They don't make the boots softer. They don't stop the shells from falling. They're just words, thin lines of ink on fragile paper, trying to pretend there's still a connection between here and home. And maybe that's the point. Not truth, not hope, but the illusion of both. Enough to keep you from breaking completely. Enough to convince you that someone cares, even if the caring is censored and hollow. Enough to remind you that you used to have a life before the mud, before the pills, before the fear. You finish your letter, sign your name with a hand that barely looks like your own anymore, and stare at it for a moment. You wonder if it will reach them. You wonder if they'll believe the lies. You wonder if they'll read the words and picture you as strong, brave, clean, alive. You hope they do. Because the truth that you're filthy, terrified, strung out, and closer to collapse every day isn't worth sending. The sergeant collects the letters, tucks them into his satchel, and that's the end of it. You go back to your post, back to the mud, back to the waiting, and as the night drags on, as the whispers creep back into your head, and the pill keeps your eyes wide, you find yourself thinking about the letter again. Not the one you wrote, but the one you wanted to write. The one that would tell them everything. You imagine it. You imagine writing, "I'm cold all the time. I haven't slept in days. My feet are bleeding. My stomach hurts. I see things that aren't there. Men die beside me every day. I don't think I'll make it back. I don't think I want to. But you know that letter would never reach them. It would be burned before it left the trench. And even if it didn't, even if by some miracle it slipped past the censor's ink, what good would it do? Just another wait for the ones waiting back home. So you keep it inside. You tuck the words away, bury them under the mud, under the pills, under the lies. You tell yourself you'll write the truth one day, when it's over, when you're free. But deep down you know the truth. There won't be a letter like that. There won't be a chance. There won't be an after. The next morning comes, the sergeant barks, the march begins again, and the letter, like everything else, fades into the endless rhythm of boots on dirt, rifles on shoulders, pills in veins. Another small ritual in a war built on repetition, lies, and the constant hope that someone, somewhere, still believes in the words you send. When the letters are done, when the last scraps of hope have been folded, collected, and marched away, your stomach reminds you of the reality you can't escape. Hunger. It isn't a polite kind of hunger either. Not the sort you get when you skip lunch or miss a snack. This is the kind of hunger that gnaws, slow and constant, chewing at your insides until you feel hollow. It's always there. A dull ache that never fades, only spikes when the smell of food drifts through the trench, thin and bitter as smoke. Food is supposed to be fuel. Out here, it's punishment disguised as nourishment. The cook ladles out the same thing day after day. Watery soup that looks more like something you'd wash your boots in than anything you'd put in your mouth. The liquid is grey, greasy, and flecked with scraps of vegetable so small you'd think they were an accident. A potato peel here, a shred of carrot there, maybe even a lump of meat if someone up the chain of command had a moment of generosity. But most of the time it's just hot water flavoured with despair. The bread is worse. They call it black bread, but that's generous. It's a dense block of barley, rye, and whatever filler they scrape together that week to stretch the flour. Sometimes sawdust, sometimes ground acorns, sometimes nothing you can identify at all. It's heavy in your hand, crumbles in your teeth, and settles in your stomach like a brick. If you're lucky, it's only stale. If you're unlucky, you break it open and find it crawling with worms. At first you pick them out. After a few weeks, you just eat them. Protein, you tell yourself. At least it's something. Salt is rare, butter a fantasy, cheese a joke. Flavour doesn't exist here. Food isn't meant to taste good. It isn't even meant to satisfy. It's just meant to keep you alive enough to march, fight, and march again. You chew the bread slowly, swallow the soup without thinking, and pretend you don't notice how your stomach still growls afterward, louder than before. The hunger changes you. At first it's just an ache, then it becomes a distraction. Then it becomes part of you. You dream about food more than you dream about home. Plates of roast meat, bowls of fresh fruit, loaves of bread so soft you can tear them apart with your hands. You wake from those dreams to the taste of mouldy crusts and watery broth, and the disappointment feels worse than the hunger itself. Men talk about food all the time, around the trench, during marches, even in the middle of bombardments. Recipes, memories, fantasies. They swap stories of meals they once had, describe every detail of dinners long gone. It's torture and comfort all at once. One man swears his mother made sausages so fat and juicy the grease ran down your chin. Another insists his wife baked bread so soft it melted in your mouth. You listen, your mouth watering, your stomach growling, and you know you'll never taste those things again. Not here. Maybe not ever. Sometimes the officers get better rations. Tins of meat, chocolate, real coffee. You see them eating, smell the fat and sugar, and it drives you mad. Not enough to say anything, not enough to risk punishment, but enough to make the ache in your stomach feel like fire. You wonder how many crates of food disappear before they ever reach the trenches. You wonder how much is hoarded, traded, stolen. You wonder if anyone back home knows that their soldiers fight on soup, flavoured with boiled misery. The pill dulls the hunger for a while. Pervitin makes you forget your stomach is empty, tricks your brain into believing you don't need food. For a few hours you feel fine, but when it wears off, when the edge fades, the hunger comes back twice as strong. Your gut twists, your head pounds, your hands shake. You'd eat anything. And sometimes you do. Rats roasted over a candle. Scraps of leather chewed until they soften. Grass pulled from the edge of the trench, bitter and stringy. Hunger doesn't care about shame. Hunger only cares about survival. Illness comes with it. Dysentery, stomach cramps, vomiting. Spoiled food is more common than fresh food. Tins bulge with rot. Bread grows mould before it reaches you. Soup simmers with bacteria you can't see. You eat it anyway. Because the alternative is worse. Because an empty stomach is more dangerous than a sick one. You swallow, gag, choke, and hope your body can handle whatever poison just slid down your throat. Hunger changes how you see everything. You look at the fields differently, at the scraps of animals left behind, at the rats scurrying along the trench wall. You stop thinking of them as pests and start thinking of them as possibilities. The line between food and not food blurs. You joke about it with the others, but it isn't really a joke. Not when your stomach feels like it's collapsing in on itself. Not when your ribs are starting to show through your skin. The worst part is the waiting. Meals come at odd times, when the officers decide, when the chaos of war allows. Hours stretch into eternity, your stomach growling louder, your mouth dry, your body weak. By the time the soup pot finally arrives, you're desperate, shoving forward with the others, tin in hand, hoping the ladle scrapes something solid from the bottom instead of just broth. Sometimes you fight for position. Sometimes men steal from each other. Hunger turns comrades into competitors, and you learn quickly not to trust anyone too much when food is on the line. And even after you eat, the hunger never really goes away. The bread sits in your stomach like a stone, but it doesn't fill the emptiness. The soup warms your hands, but it doesn't warm your body. You finish, lick the tin clean, and within an hour your stomach growls again, as if mocking you. Hunger is endless. A constant companion, as reliable as the mud, the cold, the fear. It wears you down slowly. Your cheeks hollow, your eyes sink, your strength fades. You move slower, stumble more often, struggle to lift the rifle that once felt like part of your body. You don't notice at first, none of you do, but then you look around and see the gaunt faces, the sharp bones pressing against uniforms, the hands that shake when they lift a spoon. You're all starving together, but nobody talks about it directly. You just keep eating the soup, chewing the bread, pretending it's enough. And when the next march comes, when the next order is barked, when the next trench needs digging, you push yourself forward on an empty stomach because you don't have a choice. Because the machine doesn't run on food. It runs on hunger. Hunger and fear and pills. This is your diet. Not balanced, not nourishing, not even survivable in the long term. Just barely enough to keep you upright. Rotten soup and black bread. Day after day, week after week, until your body collapses. And when it does, there will be another man waiting to take your place at the pot. Another stomach to fill with scraps and lies. You tell yourself you'll eat better one day. When it's over. When you're home. When the war is just a memory. But deep down you know the truth. There is no better. There is no feast waiting at the end. Just more bread, more soup, more hunger. Until there isn't. Sleep is supposed to be the one mercy a human body can rely on. Out here, it isn't mercy. It's a liability. Sleep makes you weak. Sleep makes you vulnerable. Sleep makes you miss orders. So, the machine doesn't let you have it. Not really. Not in any way that matters. You close your eyes for a moment, slumped against the trench wall, helmet slipping forward on your forehead. The pill inside you buzzes like a wasp nest, and your body jerks awake before your mind even realizes you are drifting. That's what Pervitin does. It makes your body fight your brain. Your muscles twitch, your heart races, your eyelids snap open, and you're staring wide-eyed into the darkness like a man who just heard his own death sentence. You can't sleep because the guns don't sleep. The shells don't care what time it is. They fall at midnight, at dawn, at noon. Whenever some officer on the other side decides it's time to remind you that rest is for the dead. You try to doze anyway, head on your knees, rifle balanced against your chest, and the explosion comes so close you're showered with mud, jolted awake with your heart hammering in your throat. That's what passes for rest. Half dreams shattered by thunder, nerves set on fire until you forget what calm feels like. The others aren't doing any better. You see it in their faces. Eyes red-rimmed, bloodshot, lids swollen. Hands that shake even when they're trying to hold still. Voices sharp and brittle, snapping over nothing. Exhaustion turns men cruel. A joke becomes an insult. A stumble becomes a fight. The sergeant barks and the men move, but slower, clumsier, like puppets with tangled strings. Sleep deprivation doesn't just break bodies, it breaks bonds. Sometimes you do sleep, but it isn't sleep the way you remember it. It's collapse. Your body just gives out, dropping you into darkness without dreams, without comfort. Then minutes later, an order, a boot, a shell drags you back, and you're awake again, more broken than before. You lose track of how long you've been awake, how many days have blurred into one endless night. The pill tells you you're fine, but your body knows better. Your hands slip, your aim falters, your knees buckle at the worst moments. You're alive, yes, but functional? Hardly. The nerves never rest. They stay lit, buzzing, wired, twitching under your skin like live wires. You hear a twig snap, and you're convinced it's the enemy. You see a shadow move, and you're ready to fire. You can't tell the difference between danger and nothing anymore, so you treat everything like danger. It keeps you alive, maybe, but it also eats you alive. You're never calm, never steady, never safe, not even for a second. When you try to close your eyes, the images come. Faces of the dead, shells falling, hallucinations carried over from the meth-fueled haze. You jerk awake, breathing hard, your hands clawing at the mud as if you can dig yourself out of the nightmare. But there's no digging out. The dreams and the reality are the same now. Mud, blood, shadows, fear. The officers don't care. They see your trembling hands, your twitching eyes, your hollowed cheeks, and they hand you another pill. March, soldier. Fight, soldier. Dig, soldier. There's no room in the machine for men who sleep. Rest is weakness. Weakness is death. So you keep moving, keep shaking, keep fighting, because that's the only option. Your nerves betray you in other ways too. Your stomach knots until you can't eat. Your hands won't stop clenching. Your jaw aches from grinding your teeth. The hunger combines with the exhaustion until you feel hollow and buzzing at the same time. A paradox of misery that makes you wonder how long a body can actually survive like this. Some men don't. They simply collapse, eyes rolling back, limbs twitching. The officers drag them away, replace them with someone else, and the machine keeps turning. You start to crave sleep the way you crave food. It becomes a fantasy, a dream more tempting than anything else. You imagine a real bed, a pillow, a blanket. You imagine 8 hours without explosions, without orders, without shadows creeping into your skull. But the fantasy hurts more than it helps, because it isn't real, and it won't be, not here. Instead you settle for scraps. 10 minutes leaned against your rifle. Half an hour curled in the mud while someone else keeps watch. A nap so shallow that you wake up convinced you never slept at all. Your body screams for more, your mind begs for more, but the war doesn't care. The war doesn't stop. No rest, no sleep, no mercy. Just nerves stretched thinner every day, tighter every night, until you're convinced they'll snap. And maybe they already have. Maybe the twitching, the hallucinations, the rage at nothing, that's the sound of them snapping. But you don't get the luxury of breaking. You just keep going, wound tighter and tighter until something finally gives. And when it does, it won't be rest, it won't be sleep, it will be collapse. Final, absolute, permanent. The kind of sleep you don't wake up from. The only mercy this place ever offers. Until then, you sit in the mud, eyes wide, body trembling, nerves on fire, waiting for the next order, the next march, the next shell, the next night of nothing but shadows. And you tell yourself you can handle it, that you can survive it, because you have to, because the machine demands it. They tell you the army is about brotherhood, that the man next to you is your comrade, your family, the one who will drag you out of the mud when you fall, the one who will share his last crumb of bread with you, the one who will fight to the end by your side. That's the story they sell you in the posters, the speeches, the training halls. Out here, the truth looks different. Brotherhood exists, but it isn't the kind you imagined. It isn't loyalty. It isn't nobility. It isn't noble sacrifice. It's survival. And survival changes everything. There are moments when camaraderie feels real, When the shells are falling and you're pressed shoulder to shoulder with another man in the trench, both of you holding your helmets tight, both of you praying the next blast doesn't land on your heads. In those moments, you look at each other and you know you're the same. Both terrified, both trapped, both waiting for fate to choose. You share cigarettes, pass the tin cup back and forth, swap stories from home even though you don't know if they're true. It's not friendship, it's a truce. A fragile bond built on the knowledge that the only thing keeping you sane is the presence of someone else who understands the hell you're in. You laugh sometimes, not because anything is funny, but because laughter is all that's left. A joke about the soup, about the rats, about the officers barking orders like dogs. The laughter is hollow, bitter, but it breaks the silence. It makes the mud feel a little less heavy, the night a little less endless. You cling to those moments because they're rare, because they remind you you're still human. But just as often, that same man is your competitor. The bond breaks the moment rations arrive. The moment the soup pot scrapes empty and there's nothing but broth left for the last in line. The moment the bread is passed down and the loaves get smaller, harder, more rotten the further it goes. Hunger doesn't care about camaraderie. Hunger makes every man for himself. You learn to watch your back, even against the one who shared his cigarette with you an hour ago. Because if he's hungry enough, he'll steal from you. And if you're hungry enough, you'll steal from him. Sleep is the same. There's never enough time, never enough space, never enough quiet. Men elbow each other for a dry corner, shove for the warmer spot near the stove, argue over whose turn it is to stand guard. Fatigue makes tempers sharp, and you see men snap at each other, fists flying over something as small as a blanket. Out here, mercy runs thin. It's every man guarding his sliver of comfort, even if it means another man suffers more. Supplies drive competition too. Cigarettes, matches, clean socks. Any small luxury becomes treasure. You see men hoard them, trade them, guard them like gold. Some sell, some barter, some outright steal. Trust erodes fast when you know your brother might pocket your last match while you sleep. And yet you still rely on him, still need him to watch your back in battle, still hopes he'll be there when the shells start falling again. There are fights, real fights, not against the enemy, but against each other. Over food, over insults, over nothing at all. Fists, boots, knives sometimes. Officers break them up when they notice, but most of the time they don't. Most of the time they don't care. As long as you can still hold a rifle, what does it matter if you broke a rib brawling with the man next to you? And then there's the hierarchy. Even among the grunts, there's a pecking order. The stronger ones, the louder ones, the ones who've survived long enough to earn respect, they get more. More food, more rest, more space. The weaker ones, the quiet ones, the new recruits, they get less. They're shoved to the edge, handed the scraps, treated like dead men walking. Nobody says it, but everyone knows it. Some men are worth more than others. Some men aren't expected to last, but camaraderie still flickers, stubborn as a candle in the wind. When a man collapses in the mud, sometimes another does drag him up. When someone gets hit, sometimes another does risk himself to pull him back. You see it happen and you feel something like pride, like loyalty, like brotherhood. But you also see the hesitation, the calculation. Will helping him get me killed? Is he worth it? And sometimes the answer is no. And the man is left to die alone. The meth twists it further. The pills make you jittery, paranoid, restless. You start seeing enemies where there aren't any, even in the faces of your comrades. You snap at them for no reason, shove them when they brush past, glare at them like they're the ones firing the shells. The chemical bond is different. It isn't about trust, it's about shared madness. You're all buzzing, twitching, hallucinating together. You're all falling apart in the same way. And somehow that feels like a kind of unity too. The officers preach about comradeship all the time. They give speeches about duty, loyalty, sacrifice. They say the unit is a family, that the bonds between soldiers are unbreakable. You listen, and you know it's just another lie. You know they're trying to make you feel something that doesn't exist. Family doesn't starve each other. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't leave each other bleeding in the mud. What you have isn't family. It's necessity. A fragile arrangement that lasts only as long as it has to. Still, you cling to it. You have to. Without it, the loneliness would swallow you whole. Without it, you'd realise you're nothing more than a body in a uniform, disposable and replaceable. So you tell yourself these men are your brothers, even as you watch them hoard food, even as you shove them for a better place to sleep, even as you wonder if they'd step over you if you fell. You tell yourself it's camaraderie, not competition, because the truth is too bleak, even for here. And maybe, in some twisted way, it is brotherhood. Not the kind you wanted, not the kind you imagined, but the kind that comes from shared suffering. From standing together in the mud, in the fear, in the hunger. From knowing that you're all trapped in the same nightmare, and that even if you're not friends, even if you're not family, you're at least witnesses to each other's misery. Maybe that's all brotherhood can be in a place like this. So you sit beside them, share a cigarette, laugh at a joke that isn't funny, and pretend for a moment that you're more than starving, exhausted, strung out bodies waiting for the next order. You pretend you're brothers, and in a way you are, until the next meal, until the next fight, until the next scrap of comfort is up for grabs. Then it's every man for himself again. Camaraderie or competition, it doesn't matter. Out here, they're the same thing. It always starts with the sound, not the explosion itself, not the fireball or the shower of dirt and steel, but the whistle. That high, thin scream that rips through the air and slides straight into your skull. The whistle is the warning, the split-second announcement that death is already on its way, faster than you can move, louder than you can think. You hear it, and your whole body reacts before your brain does. Your stomach knots, your muscles lock, your lungs forget how to breathe. Every nerve in you screams, down. So you dive, you press yourself into the mud. You cover your head with your arms like that will help. Like your hands will protect you from 1,000 pounds of steel and fire falling from the sky. Sometimes you even whisper a prayer, though you don't believe in God anymore. Not here. Not after what you've seen. But you whisper anyway, because in that instant, when the whistle is screaming, and the sky is tearing itself open, you'll cling to anything. Then comes the impact. A shattering roar that rattles your bones and leaves your ears ringing. The ground heaves like it's alive. The trench shakes. The mud sprays. And you taste earth and smoke on your tongue. You're deaf for a moment, blind for a moment. And when your senses crawl back, the world has changed. Something is gone. A wall, a man, a tree, all erased in a heartbeat. And then, before you can process it, before you can even lift your head, another whistle cuts the air. Then another. Then another. It's never just one. The bombs fall in clusters, waves, a rhythm of terror that pounds into you until you forget what silence ever sounded like. The sky itself becomes the enemy. You stare up at it between blasts, grey and endless, and it feels like it hates you. The noise is the worst part. It never leaves you. Even after the last bomb falls, even after the sky quiets, the sound sticks in your head. The whistle echoes in your ears long after the ground stops shaking. You jump at every noise. A shovel striking dirt sounds like another bomb. A cough sounds like a fuse. You live on edge, waiting for the next scream from above, the next hammer blow from the sky. You tell yourself you'll get used to it, that after enough nights under bombardment, the fear will dull. It never does. If anything, it sharpens. The more bombs you survive, the more certain you are that the next one has your name on it. You see men lose themselves completely after a heavy raid, wide-eyed, shaking, mumbling to themselves, ears still ringing. They can't eat, can't sleep, can't even hold a rifle. Some never come back from it. They just sit there, hollowed out, waiting for the sky to finish the job. The officers bark at you to hold steady, to stay in formation, to man your post even as the bombs fall. They call it discipline. You call it suicide. But you obey anyway, because disobedience gets you shot faster than the bombs do. So you stand in your trench, knees shaking, hands clenched, eyes darting to the sky like you could spot the next one in time to avoid it. You can't. Nobody can. The bombs fall where they want, when they want. You're just a target on the ground, hoping luck is on your side for one more day. You start to measure time in bombardments, not in hours or days, but in raids. When did we last eat before the morning raid? When did we sleep? After the midnight raid? When did Müller die? During the afternoon raid. The bombs mark everything, carving up your life into fragments of noise and silence, fear and exhaustion. The war has a soundtrack, and it isn't marching songs or speeches. It's the whistle of bombs falling through the air, the roar of impact, the ringing in your ears afterward. The fear burrows deep. You can't relax even when the sky is quiet. You sit in the trench, chewing your stale bread, sipping your grey soup, and you're listening, always listening, for that first faint whistle. You flinch at every gust of wind, every bird call, every whistle from another soldier. You can't stop, because the moment you stop listening, the real whistle will come, and you'll be too slow. Some men try to fight the fear with bravado. They joke about the bombs, call them clumsy, say you only have to worry about the one you don't hear. They laugh too loud, shout too much, pretend they're invincible. But you see the way their hands shake when the first bomb falls. You see the way their eyes widen, their bodies fold into the mud just as fast as yours. The bravado is just another mask, another lie to keep the fear from swallowing them whole. Others go silent. They sit in the trench, staring at nothing, lips pressed tight, shoulders hunched. When the bombs fall, they don't scream, don't pray, don't even move sometimes. They just sit there, waiting. Those are the ones you worry about, the ones who've already given up inside. The bombs don't scare them anymore because they've already accepted they're going to die. And then there are the ones who break completely. They run, out of the trench, across the field, anywhere, as if they could outrun the sky itself. They don't make it far. Sometimes a bomb catches them. Sometimes an officer does. Either way, they don't come back. You watch it happen, and you feel the fear claw at you even harder, because you know you're not stronger than they were. You're just luckier. For now. The bombs don't just kill. They erase. Whole sections of trench vanish. Men disappear without a trace. One moment you're talking to someone, the next there's just a crater where he stood. No body, no grave, no closure. Just absence. You tell yourself you'll remember him, but the truth is you don't. Not really, you can't. There are too many, too often. The bombs take them and leave you with nothing but ringing ears and another layer of mud on your uniform. At night, when the raids are heaviest, the sky glows with fire, the horizon flashes, the air shakes, the ground bucks like a living thing. You press yourself into the earth, shaking, sweating, teeth clench so hard your jaw aches. You think about home, about food, about sleep. Anything to distract yourself from the fact that death is raining down and there's nowhere to hide. But nothing works. You can't escape the sound. You can't escape the knowledge that the next whistle might be the last one you ever hear. And when morning comes, when the sky finally quiets, you drag yourself up out of the mud, ears still ringing, hands still shaking. You look around at the craters, the broken bodies, the wreckage, and you tell yourself you survived. For now. Until the next raid. Until the next whistle. Because the bombs never stop. They're always out there, waiting above the clouds, ready to fall again. The sky is no longer a place of light or hope. It's a weapon. A vast, endless weapon that never runs out of ammunition. You live under it every day, and every day it reminds you that you're nothing but a target, waiting to be erased. This is the soundtrack of your war. Not songs of glory, not speeches of victory, but the scream of falling steel, the roar of explosions, the silence that follows. Bombs from the sky, again and again, until you stop listening, stop caring, or stop breathing. The bombs fall, the earth shakes, the mud swallows you, and when it's finally over, when the officers shout for the march to begin again, you find yourself moving not through trenches, but through villages. Places where people still live, though you wonder how. Crumbling houses with shutters hanging loose, cobblestone streets cracked and littered with rubble, churches with bells that no longer ring. Civilians. You almost forgot they exist. At first glance they look like ghosts. Thin, hollow-eyed, watching from behind curtains or doorways. Their face is a mixture of fear and hatred. You're supposed to see them as conquered, as weak, as lesser. That's what the speeches drilled into you back in training. But when you actually see them, standing in their ruined towns, clutching their children, staring at you with eyes that could burn through steel, you don't feel superior. You feel something closer to shame. Your orders are simple. Take what you need, leave nothing useful behind, keep them in line. Sometimes that means searching their homes, dragging out what little food they have, leaving them with nothing but scraps. Bread that looks better than yours, milk that you drink in front of their children, blankets you snatch from their beds to cover your own filthy straw sacks later. You don't think about it while you're doing it. You can't. If you thought about it, you'd see their faces too clearly. The way the mother stares while her baby cries, the way the old man clenches his fists but doesn't dare swing. So you tell yourself it's just following orders, just survival, just another task. But at night, when the meth buzz fades and you're left with your thoughts, you remember their eyes. That's what sticks. Not the bread, not the blankets, not the milk. The eyes. Eyes that see you as the enemy, as the thief, as the monster in uniform. You used to believe you were a soldier, now you're not sure. Suspicion hangs heavy in those villages. You can feel it in the way doors close when you pass, in the way whispers follow behind you. Every old man could be hiding a rifle. Every boy could be waiting with a knife. Every girl could be passing information to partisans. You walk with your rifle ready, finger tense, heart racing, because you don't trust any of them and they don't trust you. It's a standoff that never ends, an invisible war inside the bigger one. The officers warn you constantly. Watch the civilians. Don't get soft. Don't let them trick you. And you try to listen. But sometimes you see things that make the warnings hollow. A mother washing clothes in a frozen river while her hands bleed from the ice. A group of children chasing a ball made from rags, laughing like the world isn't collapsing around them. An old man carving wood by candlelight, his face lined but steady, as if he's seen worse and expects to see worse still. In those moments, you can't help but remember your own home, your own family, your own life before the uniform. And the shame creeps in again. Some men deal with that shame by pushing harder, by treating the civilians worse. They bark louder, shove rougher, steal more. They tell themselves cruelty is strength, that pity is weakness. You watch them laugh as they smash bottles on cobblestones, as they spit in doorways, as they swagger through towns like conquerors. They look powerful for a moment, but you know it's a mask. You know the cruelty is just another way to hide the shame. Others go the opposite way. They sneak bits of food to children, look away when someone hides supplies, speak softly instead of shouting. The officers call it softness, disobedience, betrayal. You call it human. But you also know it's dangerous. If they're caught, they'll pay for it. Maybe with lashes, maybe with prison, maybe with a bullet. So you keep quiet when you see it, and you pray you don't get caught doing it yourself. The civilians learn quickly how to read you. They know which soldiers to avoid, which ones to flatter, which ones might slip them mercy. They say little, but their silence is sharp. Every glance, every nod, every step back when you approach is a reminder that you don't belong, that you're an intruder in their lives. You can take their bread, you can take their blankets, you can take their homes, but you'll never take away the hatred in their eyes. Sometimes, when you march out of a village, you look back. You see them sweeping the street, patching roofs, gathering children close. You see them trying to rebuild even as the war crushes them. And you realise something. They'll outlast you. The civilians, the ones without rifles, without pills, without uniforms, they'll be here when you're gone. They'll still be here when your bones are rotting in some unmarked grave. They'll remember your face, your uniform, your thefts, and they'll tell their children and their children's children. You won't be a soldier in their stories. You'll be the enemy. The suspicion never fades. Every civilian could be hiding something. Every friendly gesture could be a trick. But the shame never fades either. Every stolen loaf of bread, every frightened glance, every child you see crying over an empty bowl stays with you, whether you admit it or not. You carry it with you to the next trench, the next march, the next bombardment. You carry it until it becomes part of you. Just another weight pressing you down. Just another reason you can't look in the mirror. Occupation isn't glory. It isn't power. It's suspicion and shame. Hunger and theft, eyes that never forgive. And you march away from every village knowing the war has already left scars that no victory will ever erase. If you thought medicine in war was about care, about healing, about men in white coats working miracles to patch broken bodies, you were wrong. Out here, medicine isn't mercy, it's efficiency. It's about keeping enough of you alive to send you back into the mud with a rifle in your hand. The doctors aren't saints, they're mechanics, and you're not a man to them. You're a machine that needs patching, fueling, doping, and shoving back onto the line. The first thing you notice when you enter the so-called field hospital is the smell. It isn't antiseptic. It isn't clean. It's blood, sweat, rot, and chemicals all mixed together in a thick cloud that hits your nose and sticks in your throat. The place is chaos. Cots crammed together, men groaning, orderlies rushing with bandages already stained before they're even wrapped. Flies circle lazily around wounds that should have been cleaned hours ago. If you're expecting comfort, you came to the wrong place. The doctors work fast because they have to. There are too many bodies and not enough hands. They don't have time to hold yours. Don't have time to explain. Don't have time to ask. You sit, you bleed, you twitch, and they jab a syringe into your arm before you can even ask what it is. Morphine if you're lucky, something stronger if they think you'll survive, nothing at all if they don't think you're worth the supply. You don't argue, you don't ask. You just let the chemicals flood your veins and hope it's enough to quiet the fire in your body. Pervitin, again and again. It's everywhere, even here. You think you'll get rest when you collapse, that someone will let you sleep. Instead, they dose you, pump you full of meth to keep you moving, keep you awake, keep you useful. You can barely stand, barely see, barely think, and they hand you another pill like it's a bandage. Painkillers, stimulants, sedatives, it all blurs together until you don't know what's keeping you alive anymore. The drugs, the rage, or sheer stubbornness. The scalpels come next. If you're hit, if shrapnel's buried in your leg, or your arm is shredded, you don't get quiet music and gentle voices. You get strapped down, a rag shoved between your teeth, and a doctor with steady hands who doesn't look you in the eye. The knife cuts fast, the pain white hot. Your screams muffled by the rag. Sometimes they give you morphine, sometimes they don't. Supplies are limited, and you might not be worth the dose. So you feel everything. The slice, the digging, the tug of metal being pulled from flesh. And if you faint, that's the closest thing to mercy you'll get. Amputation is common, too common. A wound that might have been survivable in another time, another place, is a death sentence here unless they take the limb. So the saw comes out. They don't hide it, don't soften the sight. You see the teeth glint in the light. You hear the rasp as it bites through bone. You smell the sickening mix of blood and burning when they cauterize the stump. If you survive, you wake up half a man, staring at the empty space where your leg or arm used to be, and you wonder if the miracle was really survival at all. The men around you don't offer comfort. They can't. They're too busy moaning, too busy shaking, too busy staring into nothing with eyes wide open. You hear them scream in the night, begging for relief, for release, for something the doctors can't give. The staff works around them, ignoring the pleas. They can't stop for every cry. They just move to the next body, the next wound, the next machine to patch. Infection is the real killer. A scratch, a cut, a shrapnel wound. None of it heals clean. No, but the trenches are filth. The mud a breeding ground for disease. You can wash your hands all you want, but the moment you touch your rifle, your uniform, your boots, it's back again. The doctors pour alcohol over wounds, wrap them in bandages, and hope. Half the time it's not enough. You watch men rot alive, the flesh around their wounds turning black, the smell so foul you can't stand to be near them. By the time the doctors admit it's hopeless, it's too late. Another body for the pile. And yet, for all the horror, you still find yourself calling it a miracle when they pull you through. A syringe in the arm, a scalpel in the flesh, a bandage wrapped tight, and suddenly you're alive again when you thought you were finished. Alive enough to stand, alive enough to march, alive enough to kill again. That's the miracle. Not saving your life, but preserving your usefulness. The machine doesn't care about your comfort. It only cares that you can still carry a rifle. Some of the doctors are cold, detached, eyes like glass as they slice and stitch. Others are broken, hands shaking, voices hoarse from shouting orders, from apologising, from begging the wounded to hold still. A few drink between operations, anything to dull their own nerves. You don't blame them. You wouldn't want to be sober for this either. But no matter what kind of man is holding the scalpel, the result is the same. Cut, stitch, saw, burn, wrap, dose, over and over, like clockwork. Men go in screaming, come out unconscious or silent, and the line moves forward. There's no ceremony, no reverence, no dignity. Just survival if you're lucky. You start to wonder what's worse. Dying quickly on the field, or surviving long enough to end up under the scalpel. Neither feels like winning. Both feel like losing. And yet, every time the bombs fall, every time the bullets fly, you find yourself praying you'll at least make it to the hospital if you're hit. Because even in this hell, even with the knives, the saws, the chemicals, you want to believe there's a chance. A chance you'll see another day. That's the twisted miracle of it all. The doctors aren't here to heal you. They're here to keep the war fed. Syringes, scalpels, saws. They're just tools in the machine, same as rifles and shells. And you're just another piece of flesh to be patched, fueled, and sent back into the mud until you finally break for good. The enemy isn't always across the field. Sometimes he's standing right behind you, wearing the same uniform, carrying the same rifle, barking the same language in your ear. Sometimes the thing you fear most isn't the bombs, or the mud, or even the starvation. It's your own side. The men above you, the officers with their polished boots and perfect collars, the ones who shout orders from behind while you crawl through the dirt in front. Discipline is what they call it. Control, order, efficiency. But when you're the one standing in the cold with your back straight and your lungs burning, it doesn't feel like order. It feels like punishment waiting to happen. The war might kill you, but a mistake in front of your own officers will make sure of it even faster. Roll call isn't just about names. It's about eyes scanning for weakness. An untucked shirt, mud on your boots, hesitation when you answer. Little things, stupid things, but they matter more than you'd think. A late response, a wavering voice, and suddenly you're yanked forward, fists smashing into your ribs, boots slamming into your stomach. You're doubled over in the mud while everyone else stands perfectly still, staring ahead, pretending they don't see. Because if they look, they'll be next. You think punishment means prison, fines, something official. Out here, punishment is anything they want it to be. A slap, a kick, hours of running with a pack twice your size, standing guard all night without rest, cleaning latrines until your hands bleed. The punishments aren't about justice, they're about control. A reminder that you don't belong to yourself. You belong to the machine. And if you forget that, Even for a second, you'll pay for it. The fear spreads fast. You don't whisper too loud. Don't step too slow. Don't ask too many questions. You learn to shut your mouth, keep your head down, and move when you're told. Not because you believe in the cause, not because you respect the officers, but because you know what happens if you don't. The enemy has rifles. Your side has no patience. And both can kill you just as easily. Sometimes the punishments are public. A man is dragged out, shoved into the open while the rest of you stand in a circle. Maybe he was caught stealing bread. Maybe he fell asleep on watch. Maybe he just rubbed someone in charge the wrong way. The reason doesn't matter. What matters is the example. You watch him beaten bloody. Watch him collapse. Watch him carried away like broken cargo. You're not meant to feel pity. You're meant to feel fear. And you do. Desertion is the worst crime. Everyone knows it. If a man runs, he's hunted down, dragged back, and paraded in front of the unit before he's shot. No ceremony, no trial, just a bullet. Sometimes they make his friends pull the trigger. Imagine standing there, rifle aimed at the man you ate with, marched with, laughed with, while the officer counts down. If you hesitate, the officer shoots you too. That's discipline. That's order. That's the fear that keeps you from ever thinking about running, no matter how much you want to. But the fear doesn't just come from the officers. It bleeds down into the men themselves. You learn not to trust your comrades completely, not when a careless word could land you in punishment. Someone hears you complain. Someone hears you doubt. Someone hears you curse the war. And suddenly you're reported. Maybe it was loyalty. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was just spite. You don't know, and you don't care. You just know you can't let your guard down, not even among your so-called brothers. It creates a tension that never leaves. Every word is measured, every gesture careful. You laugh when you're supposed to, nod when you're supposed to, shout when you're supposed to. You become a mask, hiding every thought that might be dangerous, every weakness that might be punished. And under that mask, the fear builds until it feels like you're choking on it. There are men who break under it. Not from bombs, not from bullets, but from the constant weight of their own side pressing down on them. They snap, they lash out, they scream at the officers, they refuse an order. You know what happens next? A rifle butt to the skull, a firing squad, a shallow grave. Their names disappear, their faces forgotten, their lives erased. The message is clear. The machine doesn't tolerate broken parts. And then there are the ones who thrive in it. The petty officers, the corporals, the men with just enough power to make others miserable. They enforce discipline like it's sport, barking louder, hitting harder, inventing punishments that go beyond orders. You see it in their eyes, the enjoyment, the satisfaction. They're not just following rules, they're feeding off the power. You hate them more than the enemy. At least the enemy doesn't pretend they're on your side. The meth makes it worse. It keeps you awake, keeps you buzzing, keeps you twitching, which means it also keeps you on edge. And the officers love it, because it makes you obedient, makes you tireless. But it also makes you paranoid. You flinch at shadows, snap at comrades, and every mistake feels bigger, louder, more dangerous. Fear feeds on fear, until you're trapped in a cycle of nerves, waiting for the next punishment to fall. And yet, for all of it, you keep moving. You keep marching, keep digging, keep fighting. Not because you want to, not because you believe, but because the fear of your own side is stronger than the fear of the enemy. At least with the enemy, there's a chance. A chance you'll survive. A chance you'll dodge the bullet. A chance the bomb will fall somewhere else. With your own side, there's no chance. If they decide you're guilty, you're done. No appeal, no escape, no mercy. So you obey. You bite your tongue. You keep your boots polished even when the mud swallows them whole. You answer every shout with a louder one. You let the fear carve you hollow until there's nothing left but reflex and obedience. And you pray silently that the next punishment won't be yours. That's the irony of it all. You thought the war was about the enemy, about men in different uniforms, speaking different tongues, shooting at you from across the field. But more often than not, the thing that keeps you awake at night isn't the thought of their rifles. It's the thought of your own officers, your own comrades, your own machine grinding you down. You don't just fight for survival against the bombs, the mud, the hunger. You fight for survival against your own side. And in that fight, there are no victories, only more fear. Winter doesn't sneak up on you. It doesn't arrive politely, with a crisp chill in the air, and the pretty image of snowflakes on windows. Winter in war slams down like a hammer. One day you're cold, the next you're frozen, and you realise it's not just the enemy that wants you dead, it's the season itself. The snow comes heavy, the wind cuts through wool like knives, and the ground beneath your boots becomes an endless sheet of ice that refuses to let you walk without pain. Marching in winter is a special kind of torture. You're already weak, already starved, already hollow from months of mud, bombs and punishment, and now you're expected to drag yourself mile after mile through snow that swallows your boots up to the ankles. Every step feels like it weighs double. Every breath burns in your lungs like glass. The officers bark the same orders as always, but their voices sound distant, muffled by the storm. You keep moving, not because you believe in anything, not because you want to, but because if you stop, you'll die where you stand. Frostbite becomes your shadow. First, it's just numbness in your fingers, a tingle in your toes. You tell yourself it's fine, it's nothing. It'll pass when you warm up. But you never warm up. The cold never lets you go. The tingling fades into nothingness, then pain, then blackness. You look down and your fingertips are turning colours they shouldn't, your toes swelling inside your boots until the leather feels like a vice. The medics can't help you. At best, they wrap your hands and tell you to keep moving. At worst, they take out the saw. The hunger doesn't leave either. In fact, it gets worse. Winter kills what little food there was, and now even the thin soups and black bread are rare. You march on a stomach that's nothing but an ache, dreaming about food that doesn't exist. Some men chew leather straps just to trick their jaws into thinking they're eating. Others gnaw on frozen potatoes stolen from a field, hard as rocks, impossible to swallow without cracking teeth. Your stomach growls so loud you can hear it under the sound of boots crunching snow, and yet there's nothing to answer it with. Then there are the meth shakes, the pills that once kept you going, kept you marching long after you should have collapsed, turn against you in the cold. Your hands twitch uncontrollably, your jaw clenches and chatters at the same time. Your eyes water from more than just the wind. The officers push more pills into your hand, telling you it'll help. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it only makes the shivering worse, your body vibrating under layers of frozen wool, your heart racing too fast in a chest that can't get warm. You look around and see every man the same, shaking, twitching, buzzing like live wires in a frozen wasteland. Nights are the worst. You huddle in barns, in holes dug into snowbanks, in abandoned houses with broken windows that do nothing against the wind. You pile clothes with the other men, pressed shoulder to shoulder, but the warmth barely holds. Sleep is a joke. Your body jerks awake from the cold every few minutes, your teeth chattering so hard your jaw aches. And if by some miracle you do drift off, the cold creeps in anyway, wrapping around your chest until you wake gasping. Some don't wake at all. You find them stiff in the morning, frozen solid where they lay, eyes open, frost clinging to their lashes. Another body to march past, another reminder that the winter takes as many men as the bullets. The officers call it endurance. They tell you the march is proof of your strength, your loyalty, your will to survive. But as you stumble forward on legs that feel like lead, as your nose drips blood from the cold, as your breath turns to ice crystals on your scarf, you know the truth. It isn't endurance, it's cruelty. Cruelty from the war, from the season, from the very ground you're walking on. Men fall all the time. Their legs buckle, their bodies give out, their faces slam into the snow. Sometimes comrades haul them up, drag them along, shout in their ears to keep going. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the march doesn't pause, and the man is left where he fell, quickly covered by snow, disappearing into the white like he was never there. You tell yourself you'll remember his name, but you won't. The cold erases everything. Your uniform doesn't save you. The wool is too thin, the boots soak through, the gloves are stiff with ice. You layer everything you own on your body, and still the wind finds a way in, stabbing at your ribs, clawing at your ears, slicing across your face until your skin splits and bleeds. The officers tell you to keep moving to stay warm. You do, and the sweat freezes under your clothes, leaving you colder than before. You can't win. The cold laughs at your efforts, mocks your weakness, and settles deeper into your bones. You stop feeling like a man. You feel like a shadow, dragging itself across a frozen landscape, buzzing on pills, starving for food, numb from frostbite, trembling from exhaustion. The war already stripped away your dignity. Winter strips away your humanity. You're no longer living, just surviving, just moving one step at a time because stopping means death. Sometimes, though, you catch glimpses of strange beauty. The snow glows blue under the moonlight. The trees glitter with ice like crystal. The silence is so deep it feels holy. For a moment you almost forget the hunger, the frostbite, the shakes. For a moment you're just a man in winter, seeing the world covered in white. But then someone coughs, someone collapses, someone screams from frostbitten pain, and the beauty shatters. The war drags you back, reminding you it poisons even the snow. The march never ends. Days blur into nights, nights blur into days. Your sense of time vanishes. You measure life in steps, in breaths, in how many pills are left in the little tin in your pocket. You wonder if this is the end, if the war won't kill you with bullets or bombs, but with cold and hunger, slowly, painfully, until you simply stop moving. And yet you keep going. Not because of hope, not because of belief, not even because of orders. You keep going because the body refuses to quit, because the will to live clings to you even as everything else falls away. You keep going because somewhere inside, beneath the frostbite, beneath the hunger, beneath the shakes, you still don't want to die. Not here. Not frozen and forgotten in the snow. So you march, step after step, breath after breath, shiver after shiver. Frostbite gnawing, hunger clawing, meth buzzing. You march into the winter, and the winter doesn't care if you survive. The cold hasn't left your bones, the hunger hasn't left your stomach, the meth hasn't left your bloodstream. And now something else starts to set in. Something worse than frostbite, worse than exhaustion, worse than the bombs. Your own body begins to turn against you. It isn't just the enemy, or the officers, or the winter trying to break you. It's your veins, your nerves, your mind itself. The very thing that carried you this far starts tearing itself apart. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing, just the usual shakes, the usual hunger, the usual exhaustion. Everyone's trembling, everyone's exhausted, everyone's starving. But then you realise yours doesn't stop, even when you're lying still, even when you're wrapped in all the blankets you can find, even when there's no wind cutting through you. Your hands keep twitching. Your jaw clenches until your teeth ache. Your eyes flicker left and right, searching for movement that isn't there. You can't shut it off. You can't calm down. The pills did this, you know it. You've been swallowing them for months, sometimes handfuls at a time, the little white tablets pressed into your palm by officers who tell you they're your fuel. And for a while they were. They kept your legs moving, kept your eyes open, kept your rifle steady when your body wanted to collapse. But nothing comes free. Now the bill is due. The fuel burns too hot, and the machine is breaking down. Sleep doesn't come anymore. You lie in the dark, eyes wide open, your mind running faster than your body ever could. Thoughts sprint through your skull, one after another, too fast to grab, too loud to ignore. You hear voices that aren't there, footsteps that don't exist, whispers that slither through the dark and vanish when you try to follow them. Every sound jolts you upright, heart hammering, sweat soaking your shirt, even though the air is freezing. The war outside never lets you rest. And now the war inside makes sure you never will again. When you do drift off, it isn't sleep, it's collapse. And the collapse is worse than being awake. Dreams twist into nightmares, and nightmares twist into hallucinations. You wake screaming, sure that bombs are falling, sure that someone's standing over you with a knife, sure that the rats chewing at your boots are climbing into your chest. The other men shove you, curse you, tell you to shut up. But they're no better. You see it in their eyes. They're breaking too. Food doesn't taste like food anymore. The pills gnaw at your stomach until it feels raw, acid rising in your throat every time you try to eat. Bread turns to ash on your tongue. Soup makes you gag. Sometimes you vomit before you even swallow, body rejecting the only thing that could keep you alive. The hunger never leaves, but eating doesn't fix it. You're starving and nauseous at the same time, stomach clenching so hard you can barely stand. Your heart is worse. It never slows. It hammers against your ribs like it's trying to escape, pounding so fast you wonder if it'll just burst one day. You clutch your chest, certain you're dying, certain this is the end. Then it passes, leaving you gasping, sweating, shaking, and you know it'll happen again. Maybe tomorrow, maybe an hour from now. The pills don't let go. They ride you until you break. And then there's the paranoia. That's the part that crawls deepest, that eats you alive from the inside. You stop trusting your own senses. Shadows move at the corner of your eyes. Whispers echo in your ears when the trench is silent. Faces blur, and you can't tell if the man next to you is your comrade or someone waiting to slit your throat. You grip your rifle tighter, finger brushing the trigger, and you wonder if they're thinking the same about you. The officers tell you it's just nerves, that you're weak, that you need more pills, more discipline, more marching to burn out the fear. You want to scream at them, tell them it isn't nerves, it's poison. But you don't, because the punishment for weakness is worse than the shakes. So you swallow the pills they hand you, and the cycle tightens its grip. You see men crack completely, eyes wide, teeth grinding, words tumbling out in nonsense. They laugh at nothing, cry at nothing, fire rifles into the air because they swear they saw movement. Some claw at their own skin, convinced something's crawling under it. Others just rock back and forth, whispering prayers to gods they never believed in before. They're pulled away, sometimes to hospitals, sometimes to ditches. You don't ask which. You just hope it isn't you next. The worst part is knowing it's not going to stop. The frostbite might heal. The hunger might ease if supplies come. The bombs might pause between raids. But the pills are permanent. They don't leave. They carve themselves into your nerves, your muscles, your brain, until you're not sure what part of you is still you. You wonder what you'd be without them now. Could you walk? Could you stand? Could you even breathe without the chemical fire forcing you forward? You stop feeling like a man. You feel like a puppet, strings pulled by powders and pills, jerking and twitching to a rhythm you can't control. Addiction isn't a word you use out loud. It's weakness. It's shame. But in your head, when the paranoia whispers, you know that's what you are. Addicted, hooked, owned, and no officer, no doctor, no comrade can change it. Some men try to quit, hoarding pills in their pockets, spitting them out when the officers look away. You watch them collapse within days. Shakes so bad they can't hold a rifle. Sweat so violent they soak through their uniforms. Screams that tear their throats raw in the night. Withdrawal doesn't free them. It kills them. Faster, sometimes, than the pills themselves. So you keep swallowing, because at least the poison keeps you standing. For now. The paranoia grows until it bleeds into everything. You don't just distrust your senses, you distrust everyone. You look at comrades and wonder if they're plotting against you, if they're whispering to the officers, if they're stealing your rations in the night. You snap at them, shove them, threaten them. They do the same to you. The line between brotherhood and suspicion vanishes, and the unit becomes a pack of twitching animals, snarling at shadows, glaring at each other through bloodshot eyes. And the war keeps going. The bombs still fall, the bullets still fly, the officers still shout. None of them care that you're breaking. None of them care that your body is revolting against itself. They just want you moving, fighting, killing. They hand you another pill, another rifle, another order, and you obey because the alternative is punishment or collapse. You don't know which will come first. The bullet, the frostbite, or your own heart tearing itself apart. You just know that something will. And when it does, it won't feel like the enemy killed you. It'll feel like your own body finished the job the war started. That's the final betrayal. Not the officers, not the machine, not even the cause. Your own flesh turning against you. Your own nerves burning you alive. Your own brain feeding you lies until you can't tell the difference between reality and paranoia. You're not afraid of the enemy anymore. You're afraid of yourself. And in war, there's no cure for that. Only more pills. Defeat doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't come with a trumpet blast or a single clean line on a map that everyone can point to and say, here's where it ended. Defeat creeps in. It starts in whispers, in glances, in the way men lower their voices when officers pass. It begins in the small things, a march that turns backward instead of forward, trenches abandoned under cover of night, orders spoken more urgently but with less conviction. You feel it before anyone says it. You feel it in the air, heavy and sour, the same way you can smell rot before you see it. The officers bark the same words as always: victory, strength, loyalty. But the words don't land anymore. They echo hollow in your head because you can see the truth with your own eyes. You see the maps rolled up in haste, the equipment left behind, the long lines of men retreating with their boots dragging instead of stomping. No one wants to admit it, but you all know. You're losing. Retreat isn't noble. It isn't orderly. It's chaos disguised as discipline. Officers scream at you to march faster, to hold the line, to cover the rear. You stumble through the snow, through the mud, through the wreckage of villages you once occupied. The civilians are still there, watching with the same cold eyes. But now they're bolder. Some spit as you pass. Some laugh. Some vanish into shadows. And you know they'll come back with weapons the second you're gone. You feel the shame burning hotter than the frostbite. Yesterday you were the conqueror. Today you're just another man running with his tail between his legs. The desperation seeps in deeper with every mile. Supplies thin until they disappear completely. Rations are gone. Ammunition is gone. Even the meth is handed out less often, because there isn't enough to keep everyone buzzing. The officers hoard what's left, shoving pills into their own mouths while they promise you reserves are coming. But you know reserves aren't coming. You know this is it. What's left of you is all there is. The wounded slow the retreat. Men dragging broken legs, coughing blood, leaning on shoulders that can barely hold them. You see the officers glance at them with impatience, with calculation. And you know what's coming. Orders whispered, then shouted, then carried out. The wounded are left behind. Sometimes with a pat on the shoulder. Sometimes with nothing at all. Left in barns, in ditches, in snowbanks. Left to wait for the enemy or for death. Whichever finds them first. You don't look back, because you don't want to see their faces when they realise they've been abandoned. And still the orders keep coming. Fight to the last bullet. Hold every inch, never retreat without command. You hear these words even as you march backward, even as your boots drag across ground you once swore to hold forever. The contradiction tears at you. They tell you to retreat, but punish you for moving too slowly. They tell you to survive, but order you to fight to the last. Which is it? Which do you obey? The answer is simple. Whichever order keeps you breathing one more day. The desperation in the men around you is worse than hunger, worse than frostbite. It's in their eyes, darting, wild, searching for an escape that doesn't exist. They steal from each other openly now. Not just food, but boots, gloves, even weapons. A man collapses, and before he's cold, someone else strips him bare. There's no shame in it anymore. Shame died with the rations. Desertion spikes. You hear about it constantly. Men slipping away into the forests, into the night, vanishing into the same villages they once terrorised. Some get away, most don't. When they're caught, the punishment is swift. A bullet in the head, a body left in the snow as a warning. The officers think it scares you back into line. It doesn't. It just makes you wonder if maybe a bullet in the snow is better than marching another 100 miles to nowhere. The paranoia from the meth makes it worse. Every shadow feels like an ambush. Every noise makes you spin with your rifle raised. You're not just running from the enemy, you're running from yourself. Your heart won't slow, your hands won't stop shaking, and every order feels like a death sentence written in advance. You stop asking why, you stop asking when, and you just keep moving, because the alternative is stopping, and stopping means being left behind. The officers cling to slogans even as everything falls apart. "Victory or death," they shout. "Not one step back." You hear the desperation in their voices too. They know it's over, but they don't know how to admit it. So they scream louder, punish harder, and cling tighter to the illusion of control. You watch them, and you realise they're just as scared as you are. They just hide it better. Sometimes, though, the retreat pauses. Orders to dig in, to hold the line, to fight where you stand. You scramble into trenches carved from frozen earth, stacking sandbags, pointing rifles into the dark. The silence before the attack is worse than the attack itself. Your stomach twists, your throat closes, your mind screams at you to run, but you stay. You stay because the officer with the pistol at your back is scarier than the enemy in front. And then the shells fall, the bullets whistle, and you're thrown into another night of terror, holding a line that won't hold. Every time you think this might be the end, somehow it isn't. The attack passes, the enemy pulls back, or you do. You survive, barely, and the retreat resumes. Another day, another march, another step deeper into defeat. You don't even ask where you're going anymore. You just keep your eyes on the boots in front of you and hope you don't fall. The phrase "last bullet" takes on a new meaning. You used to think it was about fighting with honour, going down bravely rather than surrendering. Now you understand it differently. The last bullet isn't for the enemy, it's for you. A way out. A way to make sure you don't get left behind. Don't freeze to death. Don't starve. Don't collapse into the hands of the enemy, who will show you no mercy. You carry your rifle, and you know at some point, if the war doesn't end soon, you might turn it on yourself. Defeat isn't a moment, it's a slow collapse. A retreat that never stops, an exhaustion that never ends, a desperation that eats away until there's nothing left but the march. You're not fighting anymore. You're not conquering. You're not surviving. You're just running backward, step by step, waiting for the moment the machine finally decides you're no longer worth keeping alive. And when that moment comes, you won't be surprised. You'll just be another body in the snow, another nameless soldier who marched until he couldn't anymore. That's what defeat really looks like. Not a grand surrender, not a noble end, just a slow unravelling until even the strongest thread snaps. You've seen enough now to understand. The life of a soldier wasn't medals on a chest or parades through city streets. It wasn't glory, wasn't honour, wasn't even survival in the way people at home thought of survival. It was crawling forward on nothing but fumes, on hunger, on chemicals, on fear. It was shaking in the dark, swallowing pills until your heart nearly exploded, marching through snow that wanted to bury you alive. It was waiting for a bullet to come from the front, or the back, or from your own hand when you finally couldn't take another step. The highs were never real. They were chemical, artificial, a fire in your veins lit by little white tablets that burned away everything else until you didn't know where the drug ended and you began. Those highs let you march through days without sleep, let you fight when you should have fallen, let you believe, even for a moment, that you were invincible. But every high carried the low right behind it, darker, deeper, longer. And when the low came, it came with shaking hands, pounding hearts, racing thoughts, hallucinations that stole your grip on reality. Surviving meant accepting both. You swallowed the pill, you felt the rush, and you braced yourself for the crash that followed. Again and again, until it was the rhythm of your life. Until the war wasn't just outside of you, it was inside of you. Carved into your blood, into your nerves, into your mind, into... And long after the battles ended, long after the retreat, long after the guns went silent, that rhythm never stopped. Some men carried it home, their veins still buzzing, their night still broken, their minds still whispering lies. Some never carried it home at all. Living through it wasn't triumph. It wasn't victory. It was survival in the barest sense. Lungs still pulling air, a heart still pumping, eyes still open. But inside, something else had already died. The boy who marched into the barracks, the man who once believed in something, even if he couldn't say what, it was gone. What was left was hollow, twitching, tired. A shell that the war had used, burned out and discarded. That's the truth. Not the posters, not the speeches, not the myths. Just hunger, frostbite, meth, fear, punishment, retreat, collapse. Just men ground down until they weren't men anymore. That's what it meant to be a soldier on the so-called miracle drug. That's what it meant to live high and die low. So if you're still awake, congratulations. You've survived a march through all of it. You've sat in the barracks, swallowed the pills, felt the frostbite gnaw, heard the bombs fall, watched the body revolt, and staggered through defeat. You've lived the highs and you've lived the lows. And now you understand why most of them never came back the same, if they came back at all. Hey guys, if you actually made it this far, thanks for sticking with me through this one. I know it wasn't pretty, but history rarely is when you peel away the surface. If you want more of these kinds of deep dives, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you are, or maybe just say hi. I always love reading those, and if you're using this to fall asleep, well, I hope you're out cold by now. But if not, and you're still here in the dark, then good night, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next one.